everyone around Dave had manners. You know, and if they didn't, people would put manners on them. And he's just spun round out of the blue, dusters on, smash, smash, smash. He was a serving policeman. So you've beat him up dressed like a clown in the foyer of a court on camera. And I've heard the sirens. I've jumped in the car going through Thamesmead at 120 mile an hour in a Mondeo. Freddie Foreman's hitting his head on the roof of the car and he went, "Go on, boy," when it's like the old days. I love it. And he was 75. It smashed the gates in, come in. They're fully armed up with the lights, the guns, the balaclavas. And they're looking at him. He's foaming at the mouth and they're going, "Fucking hell, should we call an ambulance?" The girl's going to me, I said, "You can't do that." She said, "What?" I said, "He's got to drive home later." A common assault on a traffic warden. Coughed up a big greenie, hit her on the forehead and it slid down. By the way, her husband was a police officer and I did go to prison for it. And in the dungeon is this little fat pot-bellied geezer with a gas mask on and a tiny little cock and he's standing there wanking. But what a fucking party.
Just a quick one. I want to thank our main sponsors, Bauer Security. They're a UK-based security firm that cover the entertainment, industrial, corporate and construction industries. I'm going to leave the links to their Instagram and their website below in the description so you can contact them direct. You can also find my own social media platforms down there too. And if you've got this far and you haven't yet liked and subscribed to the channel, can I ask that you do so? It takes 2 seconds, costs nothing, and it helps us improve the experience for the guests and for those at home watching. Thanks again. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I hope you enjoy this one. Brendan, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
The last time we saw each other was October at my house when it was Dave sat opposite me. And of all the things he told me, the things that stuck out the most was the love he still had for Jenny and the love he had for you. He made no bones, no secrets about it, that you were his best friend. And that was on and off camera when we had coffees at the Gravetime Manor. So it must have been an almighty shock to the system. Not that we're going to touch base on Dave's death yet, but just so you know, whatever roller coaster we go on, I'm with you and I feel you and I'm going to be emotionally invested in this because I am big on friendship. And if I knew my best friend was going to take his life any day, I would be grieving from the day he told me that was going to happen. And then when it did happen, I'm not sure I'd ever recover. So I know the magnitude of that. But we'll start on a more fluffier note. We'll build up to all of that. Because you're not just Dave Courtney's best friend. You're Brendan. You're your own man, your own entity. I've seen Easy Money, your own documentary, which I thought was brilliant, by the way. So we're going to cover that. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bexley Heath. Mum and Dad was Irish immigrants. So I'm a first generation. My mum and dad was from Northern Ireland. Straight goers, worked very hard. My mum had a few issues mental health-wise, but she was a good mum. I had a terrific dad. I got no complaints about my upbringing. Dad had a good work ethic, got me working as a youngster. Back in the 80s when we could all be real and be men and you didn't have to dress up to go to work. Do you know what I mean? Now, you go to a building site now, you got to dress like a fucking or licorice allsort or something. You know what I mean? We actually went to work in what you wanted to wear, and there weren't no, I know you've got to have it, but I'm just saying it was better when we was young because there was none of that health and safety over drama stuff, and we had a laugh and everyone went to work and enjoyed it. So, and I just started off with my dad working, driving diggers, got a company, he helped me set up, we started working together, had reasonable amount of success. But I was always going to be like, I always liked partying. I couldn't help it, right? And all of a sudden, I went out one weekend, ended up taking a knee, and that was sort of 1990, 91. And then it was like 2005. But what a fucking party. So yeah, that was, my life sort of just drifted along. In the first them early years of my life was exciting for me as a youngster because we was earning money, it was going out enjoying ourselves, partying, and I had a zest for life pretty much the same as Dave did. I loved being out, I loved meeting people, I loved making money, I loved working. So I was an outgoing person like that. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose, meeting Dave was just it had an impact on me and changed my life. I didn't realise what it was going to be at the time, but Dave had an aura. There was something about him that was different. And when I met Dave, I'll tell you the first time I actually met him was I was driving a digger and I was knocking down a man called Mickey Fiveholes, right? Or Mcgirr. He's a lovely man. And I was knocking down his house in Swanley, doing a bit of demo. And he said to me, and bearing in mind I'd never heard of Dave Courtney at this stage, he went, I've got a geezer coming out today. He went, he's proper top man. He went, he's got a lot of shout in London. He's got a lot of lads with him. He's this. And I actually didn't really know anything about that life at that time. I was just, working on building sites, hadn't heard of it. And this geezer turned up in a black Jaguar XJS with like gold wheels, gold plated. The Jaguar was gold plated. The handles were gold plated on this car. And it just looked, I'm not saying tacky, but it just looked like a bit, fuck me. You looked at it and thought, this has got to be a flash car. This has to be one flash car. He's got fucking rings on every finger. He looks like Mr. T. He's got the black leather waistcoat on. He's smart, he's sharp. I have to say, he was a good-looking man, you know what I mean? He was a young man at the time. And I just thought, what a flash. And if I'm honest...
It was.
Well, it was, but my immediate thoughts with him were, probably a bit flash, probably a bit up his own arse. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't know who he was. And I see him and Mick chatting and having a laugh. They seemed to be getting on really well. He had his cigar, Dave, and he come wandering over to where I was knocking his house down. Excuse me. And he stopped me and he went, any chance, mate? He went, I'd love to do that. That looks the absolute bollocks, knocking an house. He went, do you reckon I could have a go? Would you show me how to do it? And I went, yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, get in. So he got in the digger and I said, pull that lever, do that. And he knocked a bit of the house down. He had a go for 4 or 5 minutes. And he just so wasn't what I expected because he was so polite, and genuinely funny. He just had an aura that was going to make you laugh as soon as you was around him. And he shook me hand and he went, good luck, mate. He said, I might see you again. And I never took no notice of it. But at the time, I used to go to a little club in Swanley called Icarus, or Deja Vu it become. And then we used to go to Dorrington's afterwards. And then I was at Deja Vu, or well, it would have been Icarus then. I was at Icarus and this girl said to me, I've got a ticket for Ministry of Sound tonight. It's the opening night of Ministry of Sound. I didn't even know what it was. And I went, all right. And she went, come up there. And just before this had happened, I'd started taking a few pills. Everyone was doing these at that time.
Preparing yourself.
And, the ease was all right. We used to go to Dorrington's and come out of there about 4 o'clock. Weren't a bad gaff. It was all right. Anyway, she's took me out to the Ministry of Sound. And honestly, Liam, from walking in them doors at the Ministry of Sound, it was life-changing. The euphoric feeling, the actual heat of the club, seeing all them sexy girls dancing on the bar, everyone dancing, the bass, the music was so intense. And it was like, I'd never experienced anything like that before.
And how old would you have been then? Your first rave?
Probably about 23, 24 when I first got into like that, that depth of raving, do you know what I mean? And that was just, I was hooked, right? But Dave worked on the door that night. And I'm not saying...
Of the ministry?
He worked on the Ministry of Sound. He was running the security team on the opening night.
Right.
So I'm not saying he remembered me, but he was very polite when I went in, nodded, shook my hand, went, all right. And I didn't know whether he remembered me, but he was polite, right? And of course, that was it. I was hooked on the ministry. I actually got a membership that night And I thought, fuck me, I'm up here every week now. Right, but so I used to start seeing Dave, and you'd see him like later on in the club in the VIP lounge, and him and Jenny would be in there, and you had, I mean, at the time, they were, if you looked at the people around him, as much as they were having a laugh, they were raving and dancing, I'm talking about a serious bunch of scary-looking geezers, right? For instance, Mark Bates, Ian Tucker, Marcus Redwood, Mad Pete. You know, there's a few other names I better not say just in case, but I'm pretty sure the ones I'm saying are all right. Do you know what I mean? But all of them was polite. All of them was nice to me and anyone that I've seen around them. But you just knew by looking at them, you wouldn't want to give them the ump. Do you know what I mean? But Dave seemed to hold court with them all. And they all was like a band of men that was raving, but also you could see that they was a powerful, naughty band of men if you wanted to fuck about with them. And I had mates of mine going, oh, what you going up there for? What you hanging around with them? But I never had any bad intentions. Do you know what I mean? And so I think it was about a month, 6 weeks in, I'd been going up ministry and all that. And there was one night, and this was a time there, and when you went out clubbing, right, say you went to the aquarium or you went to, you could go Camden Palace, Leisure Lounge, Bagley's, or you could go any of these clubs first. I mean, I used to go to the Emporium and Legends. So there's so many clubs you'd go to, and you'd go to ministry at 3, 4 o'clock usually. So you'd pull a bird at one club and you'd be off your nut, and you'd go to another club, and then you might think, fuck me, there's a better one over there. And you just end up losing her in the crowd, you know what I mean? Or birds would actually do the same to you. It was a bit mad. It was a mad, ravey type world, you know, nothing, you didn't take too much for granted and you didn't take it serious. But this night I'd gone in ministry with this bird, and I'd got up into the VIP lounge, but she hadn't got her hand stamped to get in. So I thought, oh, touch, she was getting on my nerves a bit anyway. So I'm now in the VIP, and there's a settee like where you sit on that side, and it's got a bit in the middle, and so you can sit each side of it. So Dave's got his back to me, Dave, Jen, and a few other people. I just said hello, I haven't taken a notice, but I've now pulled this other bird, and I'm chatting away to her, getting on really well. And then the bird who I'd brought in there has now blagged her way in. So she's come up with the drink, and she started shouting at me, and I'm a bit off my nut, and I thought, oh no, and I know everyone's starting to look at me now. So I'm looking at it like, I can hear people are turning, you know, just, I know that they're looking at me, yeah. So she's shouting and screaming. I went, listen, look, hold it. I said, just wait a minute. She went, what? I said, you've obviously mistaken me for someone who gives a fuck. And I knew that it was all going to, by now she'd already lost the plot, so she just threw the drink over me and walked off, right? And Dave has just turned round and went to me, mate, that was really funny. I didn't expect you to handle it like that. And he went, you've made me laugh, come here. So I ended up sitting with Dave that night, and we just bounced off each other. We had the same type of zany, piss-taking black humour. He was just someone I loved being around, and I made him laugh, and I was crying with laughter. Do you know what I mean? So it was just straight away a really exciting sort of night. But I went to him, I looked at all these geezers in there who was with him. I went, Dave, I'm going to be really honest with you now. I said, I know what you're about. I know what's going on. You know, I can see everyone. I said, but I'm actually a coward, right? I said, 100%. I don't like fighting because I usually get beat up, right? So I'm from the Arthur Daily School of Martial Arts, right? I'll be in the car or I'll have my trainers on and I'm off. So please, if you ever think me and you will get on together and we go out, if there's ever going to be a fight, I'm telling you now, I'm off, right? Because I don't want you to think I'm going to jump in and all that. I ain't about that. I wouldn't want to do it and mug myself off. So I'm telling you right at the start. He went, don't be fucking stupid. What are you on about? I went, no, I'm just being honest with you, Dave. I just don't want you to think I'm not pretending. I'm not a gangster. I'm not like any of these big men in here who can look after themselves. I'm just like a rogue, yeah? I said, I'll do other things for you, I'd help you in other ways, but don't look at me for the fighting thing, because that's not me. He went, no, don't say that, you don't have to say that. And we forgot about it, and we'd gone on about 3 or 4 months down the line. I was with him more or less every weekend raving.
Right.
I was working. I didn't know him that close, but I used to see him in the clubs every weekend. Him and Jenny would be out, and we'd all bump into each. At that time, our weekends consisted of like the Emporium, Legends, the Aquarium. Then it'd be like Ministry. Come out of there, Frog and Nightgown, then the Archies, and then the Gas to round it off until Monday morning.
Everyone on drugs?
Everyone in that scene is not coke, right? Nothing like that. That was a pure rave scene where ecstasy was the drug. And everyone in that scene went out. I never see any trouble in any clubs. I'm sure there was bits of violence around the outside of it, but in the actual club, you never see anything. Do you know what I mean? It was, and everyone on that ecstasy in there just loved each other.
So you met as rave buddies. So you're the third party there between you and Dave was the E's.
Yeah, of course.
That's what's joining you.
Yeah.
But you did manage to sort of come out of that and then form an actual relationship without the drugs included.
Yeah,
which is special.
I think.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I do believe Dave felt the same thing. When we first met as buddies, remember Dave weren't a bully. He didn't have to be hard to hang around with Dave. Dave liked talking to everyone from every walk of life, right? And he respected everyone in the same way. Everyone to him had to be respected, and he was tolerant. Even if he might not agree with what you are, he'd look at you and go, well, that's what he is. Do you know what I mean? But with me, I was a funny character. I made him laugh. I did have my own ways of doing things and getting round in life, which he thought was quite unique. And we just had a same sort of bond. I can't explain it in some ways, but it was just.
But you loved each other.
We fell in love with each other.
Yeah, I get that.
With our spirits.
I get that.
Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean in a gay way.
No, I get it.
I just mean as I loved being around Dave, and he loved being around me.
You're a fully grown man, as am I. And to hear you say that you fell in love with each other,
yeah.
Most people that'll blow their minds. For me, I relate. See my cousin right there? He's my cousin. I'm still in love with him.
Yeah.
So I've got a handful of my best friends. And you meet thousands of people in your life. My nearest and dearest, there was a moment where they're men. I fell in love with them. Sometimes it doesn't take a woman to complete you, and you don't need to be gay to be in love with a man. Mm-hmm. And there will be people that they just don't get it. It's like men can love each other deeply, and when they do, that is one hell of a bond.
Well, like I said, the relationship I had with Dave, I looked at him. He was almost like a brother for sure, and also because he was 8 years older than me, he was like a father figure in some ways. And he really did watch over me. You know, anyone who knew Dave at that time, he used to have a presence in clubs. He'd have 40, 50 people going out with him who just wanted to be around Dave. He was funny. Everything around him was glamorous, exciting. Women were all over him and Jen. And he was just a good vibe to be around. Do you know what I mean? He had the best people around him, the best security, the best bad boys, the most dignified, the ones that were quite open and straight about what they are, but they were polite. You know, everyone around Dave had manners. You know, and if they didn't, people would put manners on them. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't be rude around them. They wouldn't be tolerant of it, but they were so easygoing.
A lovely band of brothers.
Wicked. And the 3 or 4 months down the line, bear in mind I've said I'm a coward. I'll come back to that. And I made that plain because I always felt that being around Dave, there was going to be a fight at some point, and I'd like to not be a part of it.
But you know, sooner or later,
it's going to come, right? So we were at a photo shoot in Shoreditch, and there's 2 of us. I had a Shogun Jeep at the time, and someone brought a Range Rover. Dave was on his Harley Davidson. We'd gone out to do this photo shoot in Shoreditch with a load of the boys and all that. Dave's son Bo was there, and Bo was hanging about outside. He was only a kid at the time. And some group of boys had just come up and robbed his phone, give him a slap round the ear and took his phone. So he's come in and told Dave. You can imagine the reaction now. That's like, what? Fucking, where are they? So everyone, I've jumped in the car with these other geezers, and Dave's got on the Harley, and Bo's pointed them out. He thought that was them, a group up the road. So Dave's parked the bike up, gone walking up with a crash helmet on, right, and then just steamed into them. But there was a load more of these geezers than what they thought. So I'm in the car and I see everyone getting into a fight, and I'm in the car and I'm going, Dave, he's got a bottle. Oh, he's got a bottle there, Dave. It's just like, but it's only hit him on the crash helmet, it's all right. But the fight's kicked off, and like, they've held their own, Dave and all that, but they did get a bit bruised. It weren't as easy as they thought it was going to be. But they got the phone back, and now Dave's like a bit fuming, right? So he's jumped in the motor, someone's took his bike, and he's got in the car, and two other geezers have got in the Jeep with me, and we're driving off, and he went, please tell me why I shouldn't punch you in the face. I went, what?
You did warn him.
He said, you fucking watched us getting, fucked over there, and you sat there. And I went, yeah, but Dave, if you remember, I turned the music up to try and inspire you. And he looked at me and I went, Dave, and I knew the geezers was behind me wanted to hit me, but I've looked round and I went, Dave, did I or did I not tell you on the first night that we sat down as mates, I am a coward? I said, and I don't do the fight thing. Did I not tell you that? And he went, yeah, you did.
I'm the music man.
So I went, so, that's my defence. And he went, and in defence to Dave, he looked at the geezers and he looked at me, he went, all right, sorry.
Fair one.
So they just like now are thinking, has Dave Courtney really just swallowed that? But, Dave loved me anyway, and he knew I was telling the truth, and he had to go, that's actually, he did say that. Do you know what I mean? And his whole motto in life is you're straight with him and he knows what you're about. He can't argue about it because you've told him. Do you know what I mean? So that was and that sort of, in a strange sort of way, bonded us a bit more, because he knew that I was being honest with him, and he also knew that, it made him go, well, fuck me, I can't ever be around him if it's going to kick off. Do you know what I mean? Or he's not the bloke to take with me if I've got to do something.
But he knows he can take you on your word.
But he can take me on my word on anything. If he asked me to do anything else, or, anything that I could help him with, within reason, I'd genuinely, from my heart, do it. And Dave was, one of his genius parts of his mind was he would put the right people in the right places doing the right thing. He wouldn't take me to a fight, and he wouldn't take someone who could, beat everyone up and who was a real growler to a gentle, polite evening where people might not need that. Do you know what I mean? He knew which characters for which part of his life were the right fits. And that was one of his strengths, I think. Do you know what I mean? But most of Dave's life, everything that he'd done, he had right on his side. He weren't a bully. He weren't going to rob you for no reason. He weren't doing anything until you'd done something wrong to him or one of his. Sometimes people might think he'd have been excessive with violence, but Dave was making sure that them people remembered that message. They remembered that if you cross that line with him or his, that's where it's going to go.
And was Dave violent excessively?
If he was annoyed, and if he wanted to put his stamp on a situation to make sure he didn't have a problem with that person or any of that thing again, I would say Dave was excessive to the maximum if he had to. Do you know what I mean? But
did you witness any of those scenes?
I've witnessed it a few times, yeah.
Any ones that made you think...
A few of them made me think, fuck me, I wouldn't want to be on the end of that, right? But I'll give you an instance. We was in the aquarium, and Dave used to love raving, love partying. One thing he didn't want to do was fight when he was out, but he always carried a knuckle duster, right? And there was a few young geezers in there. They was probably in their early 20s. It was like just when the Charlie was starting to come out, and you could see they had a bit of Charlie, one of them, and he was going over and he's going, hello, Dave, how you doing? You Dave Courtney, doing all that to his face. But then behind him, to his mates, he was going, wanker, to Dave, behind his back. Dave and Jen are dancing, but what he ain't realised, there's a mirror on the bar. and Dave's clocked him in the mirror doing it. So he ain't said a word. He ain't done anything. He's carried on dancing with Jen, smiling and all that. And the geezer's like, done it once, done it twice. And Dave's waiting as he's getting close. And then he's just spun round out of the blue, dusters on, smash, smash, smash. And he's now literally stamping on the geezer's head in the aquarium. Like, I mean, stamping. He used to wear odd quarter tips on his shoes, Dave, right? And he's literally stamping on this geezer. And while he's doing it, he's looking at his friends and laughing, you know, because he was saying to them, look, this is your mate, what are you going to do about it? Or is there a problem? And they were all literally going, no, we ain't seen it. But the geezer was left there on the floor. People in that aquarium, they were all Dave's friends. The security come and picked him up by his feet, dragged him up the stairs, and he was obviously banging his head off all the stairs. They took him outside, put him down the road a bit from the aquarium. When the ambulance finally turned up, they thought he was part of an RTA. You know, like he was very, very badly beaten up. But I'm afraid in that world, if you want to do something like that to someone like Dave, and I'm talking about any of them other men that was with Dave, if you'd have done it to them, they'd have done the same thing to you. So it was a lesson for him and his mates to take away. You know what I mean? If you want to be cheeky, make sure you can deal with it.
And it wasn't like he didn't know who he was because you went and told him who he was first.
Yeah, he went over and went, oh, Dave. And give it all that, oh, I'm really pleased to meet you. But he was just being a snidey, you know, like wanker to show off in front of his mates. Look, I think he's a mug. You know what I mean? And was obviously confident because Dave is so... in that, if you met Dave in a rave scene, you would not think he was a violent person. He was a really mild-mannered. He would just make you laugh. But the minute Dave beat him up and done that, he went back to raving. He went back to partying, and it was like it didn't happen. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to do anything else. That was it. Job done, finished. I'm going to carry on partying.
And did you ever get caught up in one of those scenarios? Did you ever find yourself fighting eventually?
No. I made sure I didn't.
So 30 years of friendship with Dave?
30 years of friendship, yeah.
And you never threw a punch?
I never had to throw a punch. The people Dave had around him were more than capable of doing it for me. Do you know what I mean? If there was anything that was involving us, it was always sorted. Do you know what I mean? We've all had a clump round the ear hole and a night out sometimes. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying I haven't had that, but it was probably half my fault if I was a bit too out of me nut and offended someone. And I've took it like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not, but it was never something that carried on. But, you know, I've never been in a situation where I had to jump in and fight with any of them people around me.
I've got to say that is massive credit to your character because I've done the doors for years myself. That's what I do. I run a security firm and I've been wrapped around all these types from as young as I can remember. I used to go and visit Reg Cray when I was maybe 7 or 8. So my whole life I've been wrapped around them people and I've seen people come and go in and out of circles and I'm going to say 9.9 times out of 10, when someone comes onto a scene that isn't brave but their best friend is heavy, they use that as an excuse to start being violent themselves and they use it to bully people because they know they're protected. All of a sudden they become a tough guy. Yeah.
And I would never embarrass Dave or any of them people by being offensive or half calling something on because I definitely couldn't deal with it. So why should they have to deal with it? Never started a fight in my life. No, I didn't need to. I wanted to party and rave. I didn't have when I went out on a Friday and Saturday night, I'd had an hard week at work. I'd had a lot of stress running a business. I wanted to fuck and I wanted to go out and laugh and finish up with a shag at the end of the weekend. And that was it. And then I could prepare and do my next week's work because I'd got all my steam out, had a good shag and been happy.
What was your favourite out of all the clubs?
I suppose Ministry when it was good. When I'm talking about the first sort of 7 years, that 91 up to about 98, 99, them nights in the Ministry are unforgettable. It was just the sound system in there at the time, the back room in that Ministry was unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It was, but, you know, like you could say, Bagley's, I had some great nights at Bagley's, so many of them, do you know what I mean? But I suppose Sunday raves was good. Sunday raving was probably the best day for raving. So people would leave the ministry about 6, 7 o'clock, go to the Frog and Nightgown until midday, go to the Arches until about 11 o'clock, and then go to the Gas on a Sunday night. And then that come 5 o'clock in the morning. But Dave even had the bright idea. He opened up a Monday club at Cheeks in Deptford. So, and after the market traders used to get the hump because all the cars were parked there, like when they come to open up their stalls. But we'd still be in there, like, you know, if you was having a real mad one, you could still be raving at midday on a Monday. And that was the other thing about Dave, right? I knew Dave. I've known him since 91, so it's about 34, 35 years. But Dave was taking amphetamines from the age of about 20, I think. And when I met him properly, Dave was only sleeping once or twice a week, maybe 3 times at the very most. So he'd be up for 2 or 3 days at any one time. He once said to me, I'm going to try and do a whole week without going to sleep. And he got to 6 days and he was fucked. He was tripping off his head. He couldn't, he said to me, no, I've definitely got to go to sleep. But he could quite easily do 2 or 3 days, Dave, right? So if you had that over 35 years...
Yeah, by rights, he's 110.
So, but his body age, if you look at it like that and broke it down, his body age would be in his late 80s. Do you know what I mean? Which, that's what was killing him at the end of his life.
Lifestyle. Blitzed it.
But he lived such a lifestyle, and I love him for this. I miss him every day, but I love him for the fact that he went, I am not fucking living like this at the end of my life. I have absolutely took the piss out of life. I've done everything I wanted. I've got 4 terrific children, lovely girls. I've had good marriages. I've had women I've loved. I've done movies. I've been at the Old Bailey. I've wrote books. I've done TV. I've done documentaries. Done porn films. Well, nothing Dave had missed. So when you think what he's crammed into his life, you know, of course he was awake a lot more than what he should have been because a normal person couldn't have done that. But he had a tolerance to drugs that he used to test himself. You know, like Dave would take trips. He would take whiz, he'd take trips, he'd take E's. And when I first met Dave Courtney, he did not drink. He didn't drink alcohol. He'd drink maybe 3 halves of lager over the weekend. Alcohol weren't his thing. Do you know what I mean? That came later on in his life. But for them first 20 years that I knew Dave, he weren't into alcohol. He was into drugs, raving, staying awake and getting as much as life as he could. You know, he didn't want to miss nothing, Dave. He'd be out every night of the week if he could. He didn't, and he just didn't want to miss it. He was that excited about life. He'd go, oh, fuck me, I don't want to miss that. Do you know what I mean? I'll take more whiz because I don't want to miss that.
It's amazing how we managed to keep it together and was so compos mentis considering he was... So was he on speed all the time? Apart from when he was asleep?
Yeah, no, obviously when he was, you know, like sleeping, he used to let his body wear out. So he'd take whiz for a couple of days and on usually the 3rd day, you know, he'd say, I can feel it now. And
Burn out.
And he'd go into a coma sleep. Do you know what I mean? Because his body would be exhausted.
So the rave scene, that was the first, say, chapter of yours and Dave's friendship. How long did that rave... So let's say 33 years. That's 3 decades of friendship.
Yeah.
First decade, rave scene?
First decade was the rave scene. Towards the end of that decade was after Dave had done the Craze funeral and he'd got the fame and the notoriety.
And how did you find all of that? Did you find it overwhelming?
No, I found it a lot easier to get a shag after he got famous.
Yeah, I bet.
I looked on the positive side of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was doing all right before, but being Dave's mate at that time was a fucking bonus. Do you know what I mean? It weren't a bad thing. And like I said, Dave, he'd lived a period of his life as a naughty man, as a professional criminal. I remember asking Dave once, especially I think it was in the last year of his life, and we were talking about different events where he'd been shot and stabbed and all that. And when he got his nose bit off, I said to him, Dave, how did that affect you after that? Because I didn't know Dave then when that had happened. How did that affect you with your nose getting bitten off? Did it make you a bit more scared or what did it actually do? And he went, I'll tell you what it done to me. He said it made me that I punched someone a lot quicker. He said, I was so scared of anyone touching my nose that the minute I thought there's been going to be a confrontation, I used to smack him in the mouth a lot quicker. And he said, I was probably spiteful for about a year, where he said, I probably hit people when there might have been no need. But he said, that was such a big scar on me, losing that bit of my nose. I just thought, I could never let anyone do anything like that again. But, he said, no, all it done was it spurred me on in a lot of ways to actually be more violent. Do you know what I mean? So I thought, wow, someone's bit your nose off. And rather than that would have definitely slowed me up and made me go, well, I might ease off a little bit. But it had the opposite effect on him. Do you know what I mean? That's the type of character he was. But I've never shared that, and no one else, he's never told that to anyone else. You've never heard that on any other interview. He's never said it. But I remember he told me that. Me and him was just on our own one day in the front room talking, and I asked him, there's certain things I asked him about his life, and that was one that sort of surprised me. I didn't expect that answer.
And who did bite his nose off?
I don't actually know.
Do you know what happened?
It was a row over a security door thing at the time, but it was before I knew Dave. So all I knew is Dave went there thinking he was going to have a fight with the geezer. He knew the geezer was a big lump, but he said when he got there, the geezer had a fucking bollock protector on. He was covered in oil. He was all greased up. You know what I mean? And he said the one thing he made a terrible mistake is when he was going in, Dave always went to have a fight with his knuckle dusters. Didn't matter who he was going to do, whatever he was doing, he brought his knuckle dusters. And they went, no, you can't use your dusters. And he went, I should have. Went bollocks, unless I'm using my dusters, unless I'm fighting with these. Like, he had his bits on, do you know what I mean? And and Dave, he said that was a mistake. And he went, I'd also gone there because he liked to dress up smart, Dave, no matter what. And he'd always say, no one likes to get beat up by a scruff. So, he wanted to be pristine no matter what he was doing. And he went there with brand new moccasins on that day. And he went, all I'd done, my shoes just slid across the fucking tarmac when the geezer grabbed me. And he said, he was like 18 stone and Dave was about 13 stone at the time. And he just fell over on him, and before Dave could do anything, he went, sorry, Dave, and bit his nose. But Dave went, all he could do after that, even with that, he said, with the pain he went was unbelievable. But he went, I just put my finger into his eye and gouged his eye out. So it must have been a brutal fight. I mean, I wasn't there. I do know other people who were there, and they said the same thing. But yeah, that I don't really know more. I was, as I say, I weren't part of his life at that point. Don't get me wrong, Dave never pretended he was a top gangster. He never pretended he was a Freddie Foreman or a Bruce Reynolds or anyone like that, or any of them serious people that had committed well-thought-out crimes. Dave weren't any of that. Dave was a funny character. He was there as, like, if people went to him and they had debt problems, he'd go and try and sort it out for them. He wanted his money for it, but he weren't what you would say a master criminal. He never pretended to be that. And he said his phone book was the most scary thing about him. People ask me what was scary about Dave. I'd say Jenny. Jenny with the hump, that's fucking scary, mate. That was scarier than Dave, make no mistake about it. Right? But, Dave never portrayed to me or anyone that I knew that he was some super gangster. He was a funny, down-to-earth, funny geezer. Right? So, and he was trying to leave that life behind. He'd realised with the bent policeman thing that he needed to turn his back on that life. He'd seen the dangers in it, and he'd also seen he didn't want to be a part of it. He weren't never going to mention it. Dave wanted to tell his story because he had some funny stories, and he was a good showman. Dave was he was an entertainer more than a gangster, right? And that's what he wanted to be more than anything, right? When Dave chose to make that decision about his life, he was skint, right? He had no money, and him and Jen will tell you that their fridge was fucking empty most of the time. And Dave couldn't do anything criminal because now he'd become like a famous face. He was in the media. He couldn't do nothing. Them last period of the 90s, Dave weren't having nothing to do with anything. He was at home. He used to go out partying and raving every week, but he didn't have to pay for nothing. He didn't. No one charged Dave anything because he was such a well-known character and he'd done favours for all different people everyone just went, "That's Dave, it's all right." He didn't need money, which was just as well because he fucking didn't have any. But, you know, like him and Jen used to struggle at home. And because I was running a business and it was doing quite well at the time and I could see what he wanted to do overall.
And your business was renting out plant?
I had plant hire and demolition company.
Right.
And I genuinely thought, do you know what? Let's fucking help this geezer. You know what I mean? Let's help him. He's definitely the type of person who will give it back to you. He ain't robbing you. He's being transparent. Right? So if I can help pay a couple of bills, when you've cracked it off, you look after me. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I genuinely felt. And I do felt that would have happened. And I think the court case with the bent policeman, without going too deep into it, the bottom line is this, right? Months before that case, Austin Warnes had asked Dave if he would say this for him about this woman.
And who is Austin Warnes?
Austin Warnes was a serving policeman at the time, quite a high-ranking police officer that Dave had a corrupt relationship with. He was writing the book Stop the Rider Want to Get Off. He knew he'd probably been a bit naughty in corrupting that policeman, but he'd never told anyone about it. He weren't bragging about it. He wanted to pretend that didn't happen, go and write his book, get famous, do some movies, be entertaining, and try and shut that out of his life. But I think when the powers that be found out about that corrupt relationship with the police officer and they realised how much Dave had corrupted him or the level of corruption that was going on at that time, I think they just wanted to somehow drag Dave back in and stain him. The reason he went to court dressed like that is...
When he was dressed as a court jester?
When we turned up at court like that.
I'm gonna put that up and we'll zoom in on that. So October 2023, last time I saw Brendan and Dave was sat in front of me. Dave brought this with him to show me, and then by the end of it, he wanted me to keep it. So keep it I will, but with Jenny, Dave was there. So with you, Dave is also there. But that's what Brendan's talking about, and that's how Dave was dressed.
Well, that was a bail hearing. That was one of the court hearings where we went to Bow Street Magistrates Court. But months before this, the policeman asked Dave to meet him on Plumstead Common. And Jen was up there filming him. Jen was up there. David took a recording device with him, and he recorded everything that the policeman had said to him. And it was clearly played in the court case where the police officer clearly asked him what he wants him to say to Dave. Didn't know anything about this, didn't know who these people were. He actually was trying to convince him it weren't real, it was just to cover some paperwork. All right, so Dave says in that tape, "I'll say this for you, Austin, because you have helped me out in the past, but I know fuck all about it. I don't even know who they are." So he couldn't have been the informant in that case. He's clearly heard on the tape, and the police knew that, right? So why Dave was so angry and annoyed after that, down the line, when they said to him, "We're nicking you as the informant in the case," he was going, "Well, how the fuck can you nick me for that? You know I'm not the informant. You've got the tape. I'll give it to you." So for whatever reason, I don't know the full legality of it, but they did. They carried on with having him under arrest, put him on bail. And he said to them, "If you put me in the dock with this man who's now saying I'm his informant," yeah, because Austin's saying that, yeah, Dave was the informant for the case. "If you put me in the dock with that man, I'm beating him up, right? Because he's fucking lying, and that ain't true. It's their responsibility now to make sure they protect that man or keep that from happening." So whether they wanted it to happen, we'll never know. But on the day, to show publicly how much of a joke Dave thought this whole case was as far as he was concerned, he turned up dressed like that.
I mean, that is fucking hilarious.
Right? So never had anyone walked into a British courtroom dressed like that, right? And when Austin come in the foyer of that court, right, Dave seen him and went over and beat him up. And as he was coming round Austin and the two ushers were picking him up, Jenny went over and punched him up as well. Right? And everyone, there was 40 of us there that day. You'll see photos of it. I had 50 grand in cash bail money. People were throwing knuckle dusters in through the metal things. Go now, Dave, use a duster. And when it had got out of hand, when Dean was beating him up, the two of the officers in charge said to me, look, tell him if he stops it now, we'll make sure he don't get nicked, right? Tell him. And I said, well, you've got to tell the solicitor first. We had a solicitor. I said, tell him. And then, so they, I went to Dave, look, they've said that. And straight away, Dave went, right, everybody out. Everyone left the courtroom. It was all calmed down. Austin was taken away. But Dave went into court afterwards. And what was funny, that had all bells on it, that hat. So Dave was deliberately turning his head like that, turning to the defence, turning to the judge to just make the bells rattle. And the judge went to him. He went, take that off. Take it off. He said, like, that noise. He said, and he said, Mr. Courtney, he said, if you ever wear that outfit in my courtroom again, I will give you 30 days for contempt of court. And he went, Your Honour, at 250 quid a day hire cost, I promise you I'll never wear it again. And then he come out and made his speech, Dave, which is on video. He said, I've always had faith in the great British justice system, and as long as there is a hole in my arse, I will continue to punch that in the face every time I see him. Right, so that's a big statement to make. You've just beat a serving policeman up, and at the time, whatever his charges were, he hadn't been convicted. He was a serving policeman. So you've beat him up dressed like a clown in the foyer of a court on camera, right? So I'm just saying, name me an informant who had a handler who would allow them to do that, who would actually stand by and let that happen, right? So the main crux of that story is everyone around Dave at the time, and then people I've mentioned earlier, and a lot more, the Freddie Foremans, the Joe Piles, the Bruce Reynolds, the peers that Dave had at the time, every one of them got a copy of his interview tape. Every one of them realised 100% that weren't right? And to cap that off to .comnet about 4 or 5 years ago, and someone can look this up, on Panorama there was a case about police corruption, and that case come up, and the CIB 3 officers, whether they felt guilty or whether someone actually thought, fuck me, it was wrong what we done to Dave there, they actually said in that case there was no informant. It was a corrupt case and there was no informant. So, and that was the only thing that they ever said Dave was grassing up. Nothing else, no one else, nothing else. But for the rest of his life, anyone who didn't like him or anyone who just wanted to be nasty to him went, he's a grass. Right?
It's the low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
It just like, and that's what Dave hated about the rest of his life, that stain on him, he could never get rid of it. But anyone who knew him, that's why, listen, he had parties at his house right up to a month before he died. No security. We used to put it on the internet, come to Dave's house, come to a party. We had we didn't care who turned up because he didn't have no issues with people. He hadn't grassed anyone up. There weren't no one out there who had the hump with him. There weren't no one in prison because of Dave. You know what I mean? That was like all fabricated bollocks. It caused problems in different ways. TV people weren't keen on him. Do you know what I mean? Although they wanted him, press would always write shitty things about him. You know, his daughter, Drew, went missing when she was 13, 14. She ran away from home. Now, she was a daughter that Jenny had had with a previous partner, and she was a black girl. So they went, Dave Courtney's daughter, Drew, Dave, the alleged informant in this case, has gone missing. So they pointed out that Dave was an alleged informant and put a photo of Dave in and never mentioned that the girl that they were looking for was black. Do you know what I mean? They just didn't give a description. That it was just an excuse.
They used that as the clickbait.
As to just write something about Dave.
Constantly discrediting him.
You know. And I mean, our piss-taking sense of humour. I remember Dave when he was doing the fame thing and he was going, look, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to do this. And he went to me, trust me, he went, there's no publicity is bad publicity. So when it came out, it had on the local paper, news shopper, it had Dave Courtney, alleged informant. In this case, I got the paper, went round, and I woke him up one day about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. I went upstairs. I went, is the engine? He went, yeah. I went, Dave, wake up. I went, Dave, you know you said that no publicity is bad publicity. He went, yeah. I said, it says here you're a grass. He just went, but we could laugh about it. Do you know what I mean? We could see, as much as it was a serious issue, we had to laugh about it.
So, for the record, so it's absolutely crystal clear, was Dave Courtney a grass?
Absolutely no way whatsoever was Dave a grass. And if he had have been, please tell me any other police informant who has a handler. When you're an informant, you have to be told what to do. Yeah. So please tell me that the Metropolitan Police or any other group in charge would let you go to court like that, beat the policeman up, and not nick you. Right? And the reason they didn't nick Dave for that was that Austin Warnes went guilty. So he never gave evidence, right? In that case, he just went guilty. Had he wanted to nick Dave for beating him up in court, he would have had to sit in the dock and give evidence. And at that point, Dave's barrister would have gone, did you not do this for Mr. Courtney? Did you not do this? So rather than that come out, they let him get away with beating him up. And that's why that was.
That should be pretty clear to people.
You know, well...
now you spell it out like that.
I've spelt it out, but it doesn't matter. There'll be people out there up and down the country doing that, going, grass, wanker, grass, that's bollocks. You never knew him. You've not spent any time with him. You didn't live with him. And I'll live with all that, same as anyone else who knows Dave would live with that. We don't care. We knew it. And all them people around Dave, if he was a grass, they'd have all been in prison. He'd have been a fucking brilliant grass if he had have been a grass. You know what I mean? Everyone, he could have put fucking loads away.
And it was the policeman giving Dave information, not the other way around.
It was the policeman giving Dave information. And, you know, like, they're dead now, but Joe Pyle benefited out of that. You know, like, Roy Shaw benefited out of that because he helped Roy Shaw. You know, like, I'm not naming too many names, but I've witnessed it. I've seen it, yeah? And Dave knew that if it ever come on top, he was the only one that was going to have his head in the noose. But,
yeah.
You know, and that's why Joe Pyle stood up for him. You know, like Joe, Dave looked at Joe as his mentor. And trust me, Joe Pyle was an absolute diamond of a man. He was everything that you'd want for a man in his position to be. He was something that we're never going to see again, I'm afraid. The Joe Pyles, the Freddie Foremans, there's a gentleman just bringing a book out at a minute called Ronnie Fields, and that is a proper old-time gangster, an absolute gentleman, but he was real. Do you know what I mean? And they lived in a world at the time where before the drugs come in and changed crime forever, they lived in a world where criminals had a real bond and loyalty to each other.
There was a code back in the day, wasn't there?
There was a code. Before the drug game, there was a code. All right, Freddie Foreman knows that. Joe Pyle would have known it. You know, Ronnie Fields would have known it. Bruce Reynolds knew it. All of them people, you know, Lenny McLean knew it. He was in that era. They all knew what it was about. But that was before drugs come in and changed everything. Now there's no allegiance to anything but the drug money and staying out of prison. That's, I'm afraid, how it works. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
But yeah, they were, you know, they were all people that Dave looked up to. They idolised Dave, and none of them people would have stood by Dave if he had have been what he was being portrayed. But it doesn't matter what I say on here. You will get some dickhead somewhere in a bedroom going, wanker, grass, liar. I've seen paperwork. Do you know what I mean? But I'm afraid that's just the world we live in. That's the internet. Do you know what I mean? And he lived his life. All I would say is you go on YouTube and look at Dave's videos, look at him doing Tony Lambriano's funeral, look at him doing the Craze funeral, look at any of the stuff he'd done it without a care in the world. You know, he'd done it. There was no one telling Dave what to do. Even in his last video when he said, look, I've had enough here and I'll do whatever I want to do. That was Dave. He didn't, and in a lot of ways, he didn't get on the TV and he didn't make it because he wouldn't abide by what he was meant to be or what he was meant to say, and he wouldn't appease people. He would say what he thought, how he thought, and when he thought it.
Well, he didn't shy away from anything, did he?
No,
He didn't shy away from anything.
And Jenny will tell you this, any time that Dave had to be real, he was real. And any other minute of the day, he was really funny, loving, caring, thoughtful. He was a wicked dad, you know, like, ask any of his kids, you know, all his 4 girls absolutely love him. Do you know what I mean? A beautiful relationship with them. Jenny loved him with all her heart. You know, there was still that was the 2 people that loved each other that can never replace each other. She'll never get another Dave. He would never get another Jenny. He said that. It was quite common knowledge. You know what I mean? It was just sad what happened, and that was the pressure of that life clashing with different things. You know what I mean?
Were there any downsides to being Dave Courtney's best friend? Did it affect your business being his associate?
Yeah, it definitely, I think, played a part in my business towards the end of. I had 25 years in that game. I had 25 years of being reasonably successful. I weren't a fool with money. I was good at my job. I knew what I was doing. And, you know, in the last 18 months of my business, I had a partner come in to work with me who I realised, and Dave did tell me at the time, you know, he weren't no good. And at the time I suppose I was young, and I was approaching 40. I was probably having a bit of burnout. I was happy for someone else to do a bit of the running of the business. You know what I mean? I think you get to that 20 to 40 age, you've partied hard, you've lived hard, and you start to burn out. And I think that was me starting to burn out. Someone come in and I'd say definitely sabotaged my business, sabotaged everything around me.
Because of the association with Dave?
Yeah, because of the association with Dave, and I was funding Dave in a lot of ways. I helped him as much as possible. I funded different events. Other people who've helped Dave had the same problem. They found themselves having issues and things happening to them at the time. So, yeah, I think it was just par for the course. But I think what it done, it made me, if anything, it made me more resilient to stick by him, because I thought, well, you know, up yours, bollocks. We'll just keep going anyway.
Yeah, good.
So that's what it done to me personally. It changed my life in a lot of ways from the age of 40 onwards. I think that what I lost in losing that business, I gained in having freedom in my life. So, you know, where I was tied to that business of a high stress, a lot of money, and I did have money and there was a lot of perks to it, but the stress and the aggravation involved with it, when you actually lose it all and then you realise 6 months later that you haven't got all that responsibility and all that stress, and, you know, now you can concentrate. It's the first time in my life, really, I could look at myself and go, actually, what am I doing here? I need to lose a bit of weight. I need to get healthy. I need to start realising what life really is about. Do you know what I mean? Because I've been in a bubble of sort of raving, working, partying. Do you know what I mean? It was my growing up period. From that age of 40 onwards, I had to grow up. And I ended up, as I said, I lived in Dave's Wendy house. I ended up homeless, and I moved into Dave's, and there was Dave, Jenny, Courtney there at the time. And I used to sleep on the settee for the first 3 or 4 weeks. I was sleeping on the settee. It was meant to be temporary. I was, you know, obviously going to try and do something, but I was a bit broken. I was a bit depressed. Dave knew it, and he was just saying, look, don't worry, stay. He was making me laugh at this point. He was my medicine.
Role reversal.
Do you know what I mean? And he understood what I was going through, probably more than I did. And that, I suppose, I had a relationship with Courtney from the day she was born. Jen come out of hospital and she brought Courtney back to the flat, and I happened to be there with Dave. She was only a day old, Courtney, and she brought her over and she was crying, Courtney, and Jen said to me, hold her while I get her milk. And I thought, oh, fuck me. But as I picked Courtney up, she was a beautiful, beautiful baby, and I held her and she genuinely started to smile. So whatever, she must have thought I looked like an idiot or whatever, but I was funny, and she just started to smile. And I felt from that day onwards I had a special bond with that child. I don't know why, I just felt, and a love of a child like that is so innocent. When you feel it, it sends shivers down your back. And I hadn't been a parent. I hadn't had that opportunity because of what I chose to live my life the way I had. And I say this to Jen now and Dave, I was so grateful that they shared one of their most precious possessions. Forget the money and what I give to them. They shared their daughter with me and gave me a chance to love her as a surrogate parent. They gave me the opportunity to, you know, cherish and enjoy a child growing up. So that for me was
proper
worth,
godparent.
Yeah, that was worth. You can't buy that, can you? You can't buy that love or that experience. And when I was living in the Wendy house, Courtney was about 7 or 8, I think. How I ended up in the Wendy house was I was sleeping on the settee. Dave's house, you got to understand, this house was flat out with people coming there all day long. They wanted advice, they wanted to chat to Dave, they wanted to say they met Dave. And Dave didn't mind. Jenny get the hump with it sometimes, but Dave went, look, these are all people that along the line will help me in different ways. And he was a people's person. You know, he genuinely wanted to help people, or if he had to be that figure, he would be that figure. So the house was just so busy, and at night when you'd want to go to sleep, they'd either be playing pool. You couldn't really go to sleep on the settee if people are talking to Dave. So I went down to Wendy house one evening, and I've looked in it, and Courtney had grown out of playing in it really. But I've looked in it, and I thought, actually, it's not. It was summertime, so I got in, I've laid down on it in there, got a couple of cushions, laid down. I thought, fuck me, I could go to sleep in here. And I slept in it. And I woke up the next day and I went to Dave, here, Dave, do you mind if I just like keep in that Wendy house? And he went,
God, just chill here.
Yeah. And he went, I'll do whatever you want. He said, stay as long as you want, do what you want. So I went and got a load of fleece blankets, lined the walls, put some nice lights in it, put a sky dish up, put a TV in there, had a little mini sort of mattress settee thing. I've made it really cosy, you know what I mean? So I could go down there at night, crash out, and it was like having a bedroom, right? And I even got, just to make people laugh, especially Dave, I got a for sale sign that was in someone's front garden, and I come and nailed it on the side of the Wendy house. So it had a genuine real for sale sign on it, right? And we'd actually had the police come and raided the house one night, right? And I'm in the Wendy house.
They had a warrant for the Wendy house.
Well, we'd got an alleyway at the side of the house. They'd rammed through it in a big police thing with a metal thing on it, smashed the gates in, come in. They're fully armed up with the lights, the guns, the balaclavas. I'm asleep, but I've heard this noise, so I'm sort of thinking, fuck me, what's that? So I've just pulled the curtain back a little bit, and I went, oh my God, there's a fucking geezer with a balaclava and a gun and a light. And I went, fuck me. I'm like, oh. So, and then I've heard movement in the Wendy house. Come out. Come out with your hands on the back of your head. And I'm going, fucking hell. So, like, I'm in my pants, do you know what I mean? It's summertime. I'm in my fucking boxer shorts. I don't look a pretty sight, do you know what I mean? I'm fucking having to back out on my hands and knees. You've got to remember the door's only 3 foot high on this Wendy house, and it had 2 half doors, like an old farm door. So, like, I've come out and I've got my hands on me, and I'm on my knees like that, and the old fella going, don't move. How many people are in there? I'm going, 15. Just to be, what? So I went, well, it's just me, innit? You know what I mean? And he went, right, stand up. And I said, can I put some trousers? And he went, not yet. And they're searching the thing in the Wendy house. They've got Dave out, and they were searching for some ammunition in the house. Right. So anyway, the long and short of it is we had a couple of days in the nick. We're back home. It's all over. But while I'm in the nick, and they're doing an interview, they went, can you give us your address? So just to be funny, I went, oh, yeah, I live at Wendy Manor. So he went, what? I said, Wendy Manor. I said, we're at number 18. I said, I'm in Wendy Manor. So I'm thinking, as a joke, the coppers wrote this down, Wendy Manor, here, number 18. And at the time, after the bankruptcy, I still had debts hanging over me and different bailiffs looking for me, right? But up until now, no one had an address for me. Right? So after I've said this in the police station, they must have given it to someone. Because about 2 or 3 weeks later, 2 bailiffs have turned up. They've knocked on the door and they've gone to Dave, you got Brendan Mcgirr living here? He went, do you know where Wendy Manor is? So straight away, Dave's half thinking, oh, what's he done? You know what I mean? So he went, yeah. He said, it's down the back. And he went, is it all right to go down? He went, yeah, you'll have to go round the side, mate. So as he's sending him round the side, he's come running round and he's opened the back door and he went, Bren. So I've now just opened the top half of this Wendy house door, which is about 2 foot high, stuck my head out. I've got a big beard on me, my hair's out here. I'm sort of in the middle of a depression, really. And I went, what? He went, cut the geezer's here to see you. I went, oh, fuck me. So he's come down the garden and the geezer's gone, Brendan Mcgirr. I went, yes. And so he went, yeah. He went, you owe 3,800. I can't remember was some fines or debts or whatever. I went, oh, yeah. He said, well, so what's your intentions? And I just thought, you're looking at someone who's like in a Wendy house and you've given me a bill for £3,800 and you're asking me what my intentions are. Like, who's being serious? Right? So I went, well, I said, as you can see, mate, I've got it up for sale. Right? I said, there's no chain, hopefully. So as soon as I get an offer on this, I'll be able to help you out. And he's went, what? And he's looked at the for sale sign. I said, look, I've got it up for sale. I said, I'm just waiting for an offer. And he went, well, I don't think you realise how serious this is. You could go to prison. I went, prison? He went, yeah. I went, wait there, shut the door, got me razors, got all my bits and pieces, come out, jumped out. I went, right, prison, 3 meals a day, colour telly in the cell, I'll have it. He went, you what? I said, you just said I could go to prison. He went, well, yeah. I said, well, I'm not paying it. I have no intention of paying it. And please, I said, don't fuck me about. You've just offered me a chance to go to prison. I'll have it. I'll take it. Tell him I'll have 6 months. He went, well, no. I said, well, are you saying I can't go to prison now then? He went, well, I said, oh, fuck off. I said, if you're going to fuck me about like that, you got me hopes up. I could go to prison. Now I'm not going. Fucking make your mind up. What are you doing? And all the time I'm doing this to make Dave laugh. He's standing at the back door pissing himself, right? And I went, please. I said, please tell me. Have a look in here. Come and have a look. And he went, no, it's all right. I said, have a look in here. See what I'm living in. You want to give me a nice fucking cell? I said, I'll have a bit of Belmarsh all day long, mate. So he went, OK, look, we'll leave it with you. They walked up the garden. They went to Dave, he's not well, is he? He's not well. But we'd done that, I'd done that to make him laugh. And I thought it was fucking funny. It made me laugh for the rest of the day. Probably for weeks afterwards, we fucking laughed on that. Do you know what I mean? So, like, as much as it sounds like it was hardship, I didn't live in the Wendy house. I just slept in there at night. And if I wanted to chill out on my own, I'd go down there. And like I said, at that time in my life, I was without a doubt depressed. I'd lost everything. I was hurting. But Dave's daughter, Courtney, was my medicine. And she used to come home from school. She used to make me laugh. I used to take her to gymnastics. If Dave and Jen wanted to go out, I used to babysit her. And I formed such a wicked relationship with her that to this day, like as a godfather, she's the closest thing I've got to a child. Do you know what I mean? And we have a terrific relationship. And as I say, I'm grateful to Dave for that he trusted me with his most precious possession, and Jennifer. The fact that they both give me that honour, I really take that as a big thing. And I feel very lucky to have had that. And whatever, other people might say, oh, you lost everything being with Dave. Whatever I lost financially, I've gained so much in life and the feelings of love and the wisdom of what life is really about. I don't feel that I've lost anything. Do you know what I mean? I feel that Dave left me surrounded by love. That's what I genuinely feel.
It's a great way to look at it, and it's a hell of an attitude as well. And it's an attitude really that a lot more people should take on board, because that immediately alleviates all the doubt you've got and regrets. It's like, I'm grateful.
Yeah, and I think that, we live in such a world now that's high pressure and like material. I think if we took a step back sometimes, just appreciate love, friendship and laughing with each other. And I know we live in this fucked up shit world where you can't say this and you can't say that and that's offensive to that. And I think that people was a lot happier when we did have, we still take it, make no mistake, me and the people that I knock around with and are close with, we have the most outrageous piss take banter, almost like an army type banter. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing out of it that we won't take the piss out of. Everyone's up for having a joke on them, right? And we do laugh. Every time we're together, we laugh.
Which leads me to this question. When Dave, he must have announced to you, like, this is it now, I'm out the game. Was you relieved? Was you...
When you say out the game, you mean out of the...
Out of the criminal fraternity?
Yeah.
Because you must have been in amongst all these villains and heavy cases, and you must have thought, maybe one day I might get caught in the crossfire here.
I think where we saved ourselves is we didn't have nothing to do with the drug dealing, and we really just wanted to go partying. You know what I mean? So, you know, I weren't bothered about... I was making money, I was doing what I wanted, and I didn't have to get too involved with a criminal thing. I could rush shoulders with them people at weekends and be all right during the week. And Dave, although he turned his back on it with that criminal world...
But what did he do that was criminal? What was his thing?
Well, I suppose in the underworld, his criminal thing would have been if you wanted someone clumped or you wanted a debt collected. That was Dave's speciality. He was good at mediating. I mean, you know, I've been with Dave on numerous occasions, few occasions when something had happened, someone's rung Dave up and gone, Dave, look, you know this geezer here, he's getting it, right? He's done this, he's getting it. He ain't playing the game, he ain't doing what he's told. He owes money, that's it. Dave would go and have a meeting with him, with them people, and he'd bring the guy, they'd bring him, and he'd say, listen, do me a favour, I'm asking you a favour, to the people that wanted to get rid of the geezer. He'd go, he owes you that amount of money, he's done that wrong. If I stand on it now and tell you that he's going to put all that right, will you give him a year to put that right? And he'll give you a bit back on top. And if you don't, at the end of the year, there's nothing I can do about it. But will you do that? And I know on 5 or 6 occasions people done that. And they were grateful at the end of it. Both parties were grateful to Dave to bring a little bit of sanity, and where the testosterone and the anger was high on that side and the stupidity of the geezer was a bit leery on this side, he'd brought the two together and made them see a bit of sense. But that was Dave's biggest strength. Forget the... you know, bad man gangster thing. Dave's biggest strength was he helped people. He put things right for people and he gave them a chance, and he wanted to do that more than anything else.
He used to help mending the fracture.
He would help where there's a problem, and that was where I think Dave's talent shined through more than anything else, as a mediator and as someone who could put a perspective on things that people could go, actually, yeah, all right, we can do that. Do you know what I mean? Which in that world sometimes saved people's lives.
Other than the obvious smear making out he was a grass, that aside, what reason did people have to dislike Dave?
Well, I think there was two types of people that disliked Dave, right? There was those who'd never met him, watched him on the telly and thought he was a bit cocky, and if they was honest with themselves, they were jealous because they wanted to be him. And there was the other group of people who David either smacked him in the mouth, humiliated him in some situation because he'd outwitted them. So they were really the two types of people that didn't like Dave. Do you know what I mean? If you met him, like you met him, if you actually met Dave, I know loads of blokes who didn't like Dave, and then they actually met him and went, fuck me, I've got him all wrong. Like, but anyone who met Dave didn't feel like that.
Well, I totally get it, because even though Dave's not with us anymore, I feel like the more I've got to know Dave, through Dave himself, through Jenny, now through you, the more I like him. Yeah,
you couldn't help liking Dave. And like I said, when I met him 30 years ago and he was full of zest, he was young, he was funny, and he could have a fight, you know, and he had women throwing themselves at him. You know, he said to me in his later life, he did regret, you know, the biggest mistake he made with Jenny. He had everything he wanted with Jen, right? She liked another bird. She was more than happy to chat to birds and get birds from him. And they had a very good sexual relationship, right? But I'm afraid Dave, just like you don't leave a bag of heroin with a heroin addict, don't leave Dave with a load of, like, tabletop dancers or girls that are out in the clubs, don't let him go out on his own, because they threw themselves at him and Dave couldn't help it. He could not help it. I was the same at the time. You know what I mean? Most of my relationships failed because I'd fucked about, and I never really wanted a serious relationship. I was too in that scene of like, oh, I was going to shag a different bird next week. You know what I mean? So when you're young, I was probably a bit too mad as well to have a proper settled down relationship. I'd got into the raving, the clubbing, the working, the business life. Do you know what I mean? So my life was really full up with everything, and to have a serious relationship where I had to make an effort might have been a bit challenging. Do you know what I mean? And I probably hurt girls or let them down if they thought they could change me, but I always was pretty open about how I was to start with.
You know all the big household names, the Roy Shaws, the Joe Piles,
yeah,
and more. Did you build a relationship with those as well?
Yeah, I was lucky enough through Dave to have a relationship with them people. I made sure I conducted myself as humble as possible. And
also, don't feel like you're name dropping, because I've asked you.
Yeah,
so just run with, like, out of all the big household names, what you thought of them, how you got on with them, maybe even who's your favourite.
Well, as I say, Joe Pyle was Dave's mentor, and Dave always kept telling me what Joe was like, you know, and I got to meet Joe loads of times with Dave, but Joe was a very easygoing man, and he didn't brag, he didn't talk, he didn't show off. But whatever he had to say in Dave in private, they used to do. But he'd always be very polite. Freddie Foreman was like having, when I met Fred about 1995, 96, I got to meet Fred properly and I had a day at his house with Dave. And the stories, it was like having a granddad who'd been in the war. And I was so, like, because Fred could tell you a funny story. And Fred's sense of humour was so bang on, and you knew that he was real. Do you know what I mean? And so listening to him was one of the best times. Bruce Reynolds was an absolute genius, a great communicator, and also was trying to put you right on not going down the same path. Do you know what I mean? He was a very interesting man, Bruce Reynolds. I was very lucky to have had times and nights out with him. And there's a chap, like I said, Ronnie Fields, Dave had a really big soft spot for. They was in the unit together, and it's in Ronnie's book. Ronnie will probably tell you about it one day, but I think Dave saved his life. Ronnie was having a heart attack, and the Screws wanted to bang everyone up, and they were probably going to let Ronnie just wait until he died, but Dave wouldn't go back in his cell. He would not go back in his cell until they called the doctors. And he kept, you know, they were punching him, trying to kick him and all that, but he wouldn't let go of Ronnie. And he becomes something an issue that they had to, you know, he wouldn't leave until the ambulance and the doctors got in and Ronnie was saved. So I think Ronnie's best to tell that story. But that, you know, like, and he's another gentleman who, Ronnie Fields, if you sat with him, he's so humble and polite, but he'll talk to you about really mental things, you know, like, I was lucky enough to meet Albert Chapman, a guy who lives in Birmingham. And Albert's got some wicked stories. But all of these men, it's just like sitting and having a pint with him, and all of them's got a funny tip to their story, but they're not bragging about it, they're not being bullyish, they're not showing off. They're just telling you the truth in a funny way.
I can't see that kind of generation ever coming back.
Listen, they're all, like they said, they're parts of history now, I'm afraid. I was lucky enough to just catch the tail end of them. Make no mistake, I didn't meet Freddie Foreman until I was about 29, and Fred would have been in his 60s then. Do you know what I mean? So they weren't like having it gangsters. They were old men who you could tell had been naughty and were still, if it was, you know, like, if it still had to be, please believe me, I remember Fred at 75 one day, and I had to drive him somewhere. He got the hump with someone, and he come round to Dave's, and me and Dave had to drive him round to someone's house, right? And I was shitting myself because I had to go and knock on the door, but Fred was definitely going to do him at 75.
Still game.
And luckily the geezer weren't in. But then someone had rung the police, and I've heard the sirens. I've jumped in the car, and we've ended up, you know, I was going through Thamesmead at 120 mile an hour in a Mondeo. Freddie Foreman's hitting his head on the roof of the car, and he went, "Go on, boy." He went, "It's like the old days. I love it." And he was 75.
He hadn't lost the fire in his belly.
He hadn't lost the fire in his belly. Do you know what I mean?
That's hilarious.
And he was still, and as I say, Fred is a funny man. It's even if I get the opportunity of ever going to see him, I'm so grateful. You know what I mean? Because even now, he's 92, he would still have you in hysterics.
That's an incredible age. Was there any characters that you come across throughout that life, side by side with Dave, that put you on edge? Total loose cannons. Was there anyone you come across like that?
There was loose cannons around Dave.
And was any of these loose cannons jealous of your friendship?
There was a couple of situations where I don't know whether I should say it. But,
go on, Brendan. Go on.
Well, I sound badly, and I shouldn't really say this because the man has passed away. So I'm speaking about someone who's dead, who's not here to defend himself, right? But he was a very tasty man, right? And he could handle himself, yeah. And when he met Dave, he wanted to be like a bodyguard to Dave, and he was really in awe of Dave. And he was a serious man who could have a fight. Please understand, you know, I totally respect for him, but he just didn't like me being as close to Dave as I was, and he had a little bit of jealousy. But me and him used to try and hide our bickering in front of Dave. You know, I'd take the piss out of him and say things, and if they were funny, he half had to swallow it. But I also knew he didn't like it, do you know what I mean? But I was edging my bets thinking he can't hit me in front of no one, do you know what I mean? I've said I'm a coward, you can't hit me. You look like a bully.
Should get out a jail card.
Yeah, right? But, you know, a situation turned up one day when we'd been out doing some film thing, and Dave went to me, drop him off home. He only lived round the corner from us. And I've took him home, and he just, whether he'd had a bit of Charlie that day or whatever, he just looked at me and he went, "See you," he went, "I could fucking do you and make you disappear, you know that, don't you?" And he got a bottle of, Dave used to have a thing, right? It's another little thing about Dave's piss taking. He used to carry a bottle of tomato sauce in the car, big one, and he'd have like an A to Z, and he'd get you to pull up on the side of the road, and he'd say, "Excuse me, do you know where Staines is?" And as he took the book away, they'd go, sorry, and they'd lean in and he'd squirt them with tomato sauce and he'd say, "Staines," and we'd drive off. Right, it's just to make ourselves laugh, right? Obviously, it might have pissed the person off, but you know, like that's what it was, a prop. The tomato sauce was a bit of a prop, and it was a joke, right?
If he was bored,
yeah, if he was bored, right?
Yeah.
So, but this geezer picked up the tomato sauce and just squirted me with it while I'm driving. I was in a Range Rover, and I thought, I can't do nothing about it. He'll just beat the granny out of me, right? So I'm having to swallow it. Got to his house, and he's got out of the car, and I swear to God, I genuinely meant to just rev the engine as he walked across the front of the Range Rover, just to, you know, have my little bit of temper thing, right? So I fucking revved it and it went forward and ran over him, right? And I thought, bollocks, fuck. So I've jumped out and I thought, I've got to milk this. I've got to like, now he's under the car going, you can't. And I went, listen, and that's how easy it is for me to do you can't. Right, and then quickly reversed off, drove off, right? And afterwards I thought, why did I do that? Why on earth did I do that? He will kill me. But at that time, I was so angry with the tomato sauce, and I know I was being like a little bitch, really, but I thought, why did I do that? And then I had this brainwave. I thought, right, if I drive home, don't tell Dave, don't mention this to anyone, don't embarrass him about it, he might just let it go. Right? So I don't know that he's now been on the phone to Dave. Right? So I've gone in. And all right, and Dave went, "Everything all right?" I went, yeah. He went, "Do you drop so-and-so?" I said, "Yeah," dropped him off. He went, all right." I went, "Yeah, no worries, Dave, all good." He went, "Everything all right then?" Yeah, I went, "Yeah." He went, "He's been on the phone." I went, "Oh, yeah." He went, "Yeah, he's like, I think he wants to kill you." I went, oh. So I've explained it to Dave what happened, and he's just gone to me, "You done that deliberately?" And I went, "I promise, Dave, I didn't do it deliberately. I wouldn't have had the arsehole. But my foot weren't on the brake properly. I've revved the engine and it shot forward, right?" And he went, "But why did you say that?" And I went, because he covered me in tomato sauce and I just felt a bit brave while he was stuck under the car. But I went, I'm shitting myself now, Dave. I do know that I fucking might have took a bit of a liberty here, right? And he went, fucking hell. So I went, sorry. And as usual, like, the geezer's now in hospital. He had his chest was a bit crushed. He was, definitely hurt over it. Right? So
it gets worse.
Dave's gone to the hospital and he's going to him, right, Dave, I'm going to kill him. He's got to go. I can't have that, right? Yeah, so, like, I'm outside the room listening, do you know what I mean? And he went to him, listen, he went, that's my best mate. Be very careful when I ask you this question. Think about it carefully because I got to make a decision now. He went, that is my best mate. I know what he's done ain't nice to you, right? But what are you really going to do about it? Because I've got to think now, if you're going to do something about that, I've got to make sure I look after my best mate. So what are you going to do about it? And the geezer went, he went, well, I can't fucking have it. And he went, I'll make sure he don't get in your way. Right? And the geezer actually moved to another part of the country. But I'll tell you a really funny story about this man. Trust me, this geezer was a tasty fighter. I ain't taking nothing away. He would have snapped me in half, right? Dave took him to a show once as his sort of bodyguard. And the one downfall this geezer had is he used to take a bit of sniff, right? So picture this, Dave's doing his show and he's going, the greatest invention other than the wheel is a knuckle duster. I don't carry a knife. You carry a knife and you stab someone, you're going to do 30 years for murder. If you carry a gun and you shoot one, you're doing 30 years for murder. Carry a knuckle duster, you break the door, he said, break their jaw and you're out of there in 18 months. All right, he went, so I'll carry a duster. And they went to him, who's the tastiest geezer that you know, Dave? And he went, and only to big the guy up, he went, look, he said, I'll tell you the tastiest geezer around me at the minute, and he's here tonight looking after me. He went, like, they don't come much better than that. And he's bigged him up. Right? Well, now the geezer's fucking like that. So he's down at the bar, and he's had the sniff, and all of a sudden he's pulled out the knife, the big knife, and he's going, bump, bump, that thing where
yeah.
And then all of a sudden he went, wallop, pinned his hand to the bar. So they're going, Dave, you said don't carry a knife. Your mate's just pinned his hand to the bar with one. He's got to get an ambulance. So your bodyguard is now going away in an ambulance after because he stabbed himself with his own knife at the bar. And Dave thought it was really funny. It was embarrassing, but it was really funny. But that's how nutty the geezer was. Do you know what I mean? So,
are you going to give his name?
Listen, he's passed. And out of respect for him passing, and he had a very sad end to his life, how he passed.
Okay.
And so out of respect for him and his family, I'm not going to do that to him.
Well, he has brought a lot of joy into this room with that story, and people watching this, I'm sure that will warm their cockles as well, because that is funny.
It was really, really funny. But
run him over.
And honestly, I am a coward. That was a pure accident. I swear to my dying day. But after I'd done it, I thought, fuck. And you had that 30 seconds of adrenaline.
Did you think, who next?
Yeah. As I reversed off and drove away, I thought, I'm fucked here.
And did you have any fallouts with any other people other than him?
Yeah, of course you had little niggles with different people, but nothing major, you know what I mean? Nothing that weren't just forgot about as time went on, do you know what I mean? There's, like I said, sometimes we all piss each other off in different ways, do you know what I mean? And a lot of the time it was, I was Dave's bit of humour, I was his joker.
Mm.
And
if you needed someone running over?
Don't fucking call me. But, you know what I mean? And I do get there would have been a bit of jealousy about that. Do you know what I mean? I do get that with some people. And even now there'll be jealousy over the relationship I had with him. Do you know what I mean? But, Dave made everyone feel they was close to him. And they were in a lot of ways. So I feel that I'm part of a group of people that will always respect Dave. Them people have showed me nothing but love and respect for the way I looked after Dave and the way I chose to stick with him right the way through no matter what. But I just felt, it was the right thing for me. And I enjoyed his company and I seen the pain that Dave suffered, and I just felt that, you know, it would have been wrong to leave him at that point. I couldn't do that.
Before we get to the painful bits, let's go back to that middle chapter, that middle decade, where there was all the fame and the celebrity status and the celebrities that you were mingling with. Any other memorable moments that you think, wow, that actually happened, or I actually met that person, other than the Freddie Foremans? You must have been in the background where there was the Trisha show.
Yeah.
Hell to Pay, his film. So you've obviously met a load of actors. Then there's him making all the porn movies, going out to the States. You must have been part of all that. I'm going to guess that something to do with the wedding is going to come up now.
Well, I'll fill that in, because I do remember Jen talking about that, and I did laugh. It had gone out of my
There was
head.
a lot of questions there.
But I'll fill you in on the wedding thing, right? As she said, Joe Pole was getting married, and he'd invited Dave out as a guest to his wedding, and David invited me. Joe was cool with that. And so we're all out there as a wedding party, and we're there a couple of days before the wedding in the Treasure Island Hotel. So Jenna said to Dave, they're both looking at this place where you get married in this chapel, in this hotel, and it was the nuts, Liam. It was a lovely, it's really well done up. It's quite well done. It weren't a cheesy, corny thing. It was nice, right? And she went to Dave, I'd love to get married here, Dave. If we had the money, I'd get married. And Dave went, yeah, fuck me, I'd marry you, baby, if we had the money. Obviously, they didn't have no money at the time, right? So we'd been in Vegas for 2 or 3 days before that, and we'd met a geezer called Guy, and Guy ran a porn company, right? So Dave had been over with Guy the year before. We'd been over to see Guy, and Dave had some business with him. I don't know what it was, but he'd said to Dave, he had a porn studio set on 4 acres. So it was porn on an industrial scale, the films was all, let me give you an idea. We was walking around, he was showing us around the studio, and one of the scenes that I've witnessed was a dwarf in a Viking helmet bent over a tree stump getting fucked by a woman who looked like Grace Jones with a strap on. And I was going, I don't know what bracket of porn that comes under, but it's fucking unique. Do you know what I mean? And this guy was going, you got a cater for everyone, man. But he said to Dave at that time when you're over there, look, if you want to shag any of these birds, and imagine they're really fit birds.
Or the dwarf.
If you fancy the dwarf, what you have to do is do an AIDS test. Right? And then it used to take a couple of days for them to get the results. But if you come back clean of all sex things and all that, you could go and shag. He said to Dave, do you want to shag a couple of birds? Yeah, and Dave went, yeah. No. Of course, I had a little go. I had one, do you know what I mean? But they went to Dave, do you want to do a porn film? And at the time, he had done a couple of porn films as well. So Dave weren't shy. He didn't care. And he said to him, look, Dave, it'll never go out in England. It just goes on a loop on the hotel porn thing here in the Great Westerns. So he went, it's only here, really, in California or in Vegas, whatever it was. And Dave went, yeah, all right, I'm up for that. Dave was a show-off at the time. So I think the film was called Lock, Cock and Two Smoking Bimbos. I think that's what they labelled it, because it was around the time when Lock, Stock come out. So that's happened now. That's a year before. So fast forward, we're in Vegas again. We're leaving Guy's, and Guy says to me, when I'm leaving leaving LA to go to Vegas, he went, you go to Vegas, do black 29, man. Black 29 on the roulette. I went, really? He went, yeah. He went, and he gave me $200. He went, yeah, just put a couple of $100 on it. He said, just black 29. So I didn't really think anything else about it. Flew into Vegas, and I was a bit jet lagged, tired. So I went up to the room in the hotel room. I've had a bit of a kip. I've woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and as I'm going down to the casino, I've met Dave and Jen coming up. And I said to Dave, do you do black 29? He went, fucking black 29. He said, I've lost $500. I went, do you do it? He went, nah. All right, so they've gone up to bed, and I feel like the best way of describing me, I'm like Rodney in Only Fools and Horses. I'm on my own. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, right, in this casino. There's not a lot of people in there. I've gone over to a table where there's just one woman playing and a croupier, right? And I've got the $200 chips. So I'm remembering Black 29. So I've gone over and I've put the $100 on Black 29. And to be a bit shrewd, I thought I'll put $100 on red in case it don't come in. I'm covering myself a bit, right? So he spun the thing, and hand on my heart, Liam, that thing spun and it dropped straight in to Black 29, right? In front of me, and I'm looking at it, and the geezer just pushes all these heap of chips over to you. So I said, how much money is that exactly? He went, there's $3,600. I said, where do I get the money? He went, no, man, you can't quit now. You're on a run. I said, no. I said, I only want that. I said, that'd do me. He went, no. So then he called over like a manager or someone come over and having a discussion. And I think they checked the video. He went off and the manager come back and he went, listen to me, man. You got to do that. You got to keep going. You could walk out of here with $50,000. I've seen guys like you come here on a roll. You can't stop now. I went, well, I can. I said, that's all I want. I don't need no more money. And I'm actually thinking, because I know Joe's wedding was $3,500. So in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that'd be nice. So now just take that money and say to them, they want to get married. So that's what I literally got the money, went upstairs, right, and we was all close, we were a close-knit little group, me, Dave, Jen, Angela was there, that people was decent people. So I felt I was doing the right thing, but I've knocked on the door and Jen's come to the door, Dave's sitting on the bed, and I went, did you still want to get married? And Jen's went, what? I said, do you still want to get married here? And she went, yeah. And Dave sort of frowned a little bit and I went, here, and I threw the money on the bed. I went, there's $3,500 there. I've just won it on the roulette. And she went, really? I went, yeah, look. I said, you two want to get married? Fuck it, get married. You're here, only going to be here, might not be here again. Just get married. So Dave and Jen have had the wedding and they went off and they'd got a bird because they liked a bird between them. So on their wedding day, after they got married, they went off, got a bird somewhere. They've had a naughty couple of hours. They've come back and I'm in the hotel room next to them, right? And I thought, fuck me, they've had a nice time there. And then all of a sudden I've heard, you fucking no, go. And I thought, well, wedding bliss don't sound too good here. And I don't know what's happened here. But when Dave's told me, like Jen told you, they've got in the hotel, they've had a nice day, they've had an all-day day. And he promised her, Dave would lie about shagging a bird to Jenny all day long. He couldn't help it. She knew it and he couldn't help it, right? But he promised her he hadn't shagged no one over there the year before. And if he'd have told her, she'd have probably been all right with it. But it's just Dave, right? So as she's nicing him off, she's looked up and she went, I can see this thing coming on. And I thought, fuck me. Does it? Is it? And she went, yes, it is. So, and Dave went, I couldn't even reach the thing. The bed was so big, I couldn't reach the remote. I wouldn't have known what to do. And he went, I could not believe the porn film come on my wedding day as I'm in the room with my missus. Everything I said I hadn't done was there on the screen. And trust me, that really did cause an issue with Dave and Jen. When they come home, she sat on the front of the plane and he sat on the back. They mended it afterwards. But for that initial, Jen was fuming and Dave had his head in his hands and I was going, you couldn't write that.
It's an unbelievable story, but we've now heard that story from Dave himself, Jenny, and now you.
And
it happened.
It happened. It really happened. A guy in America, if I ring him now, he calls me Black 29. You know what I mean? So it was just a weird thing. I don't know how the universe works sometimes, but to give you that much love and happiness and then to take it away with a porn movie afterwards.
The universe had a good sense of humour that day.
Definitely had a proper sense of humour.
And on that kind of subject, what about the sex dungeon back home? Did you ever use it to your advantage?
Well, the sex dungeon, we built it when we were putting cameras in the house. We were going to have the first Big Brother house, right, in 2006. And Dave built this dungeon to make porn films or And if I'm honest, most of it was for him and Jen to go and shag birds in, right? That was his main thing. But the whole dungeon thing, like, listen, Dave and Jen went to swinging parties, they went to fetish parties, they were well known on that scene. There was nothing unusual about that. The press knew all about it. You know, Dave made that quite clear from the start of his media life, what he was about. So it weren't no story for the press, really, but him and Jen were both a couple of dirty so-and-sos. They did enjoy themselves. They did enjoy life. This is going to sound, how does it sound, right? But there was a stage in my life where I'd gone bankrupt, and I'll explain it to you later on down the line, but I was not living, but I used to sleep in a Wendy house in the garden, right? Because the house was a bit full and I was sleeping on the sea. I'd gone bankrupt. I was homeless, and Dave said, look, come and stay here. But one day I just realised I could sleep in the Wendy house. And it suited me, and it was like down the bottom of the garden. It was like a big Wendy house, you know, it wasn't a silly little thing. But anyway, it was near where the dungeon was. So I could hear Dave and Jen coming back one night from a party, and they obviously had a bird with them. So they've gone in, they're in the dungeon. I can hear all the sexual screams of ecstasy and all that. And you can't help being a bit curious, can you? You can't help it, right? So the doors on this dungeon at the time was, there was a little gap in them. So I'm looking through this gap in the doors of the dungeon, but by now they're having a break. So Dave's done a joint up, but they're sweating. It was summertime. They're having a break. And he's just gone, rather than Dave, because Dave was Dave, he wouldn't just go and open the door. He'd stand there and just kick it. So as I've leant to look in, he's kicked the door, and it was a big, heavy iron door, and it smashed me straight in the head. And as it's opened, I'm lying on the floor, and they're both looking at me, and I'm going, did you want a cup of tea? He went, fuck off.
Did you have hard on? Fucking hell.
But we, you know, like we all lived that life, and we was very free spirited, and we believed, you know, in like doing as much as you could.
Get it while you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Jen used to, if I had girls at my flat, like, I'd say to Jen, oh, I've got to go out, Jen. Would you go round? And if I really didn't want to see the bird again, if I was thinking, oh, you know, it might be a bit nutty or whatever, right? I'd say, Jen, will you go round and give her the, like, you're my missus treatment? So Jen would turn up, she had a key to the flat, and she'd go in and she'd go, what are you doing in Marquise's bed? The bird would go, no, I'm with, and she went, yeah, I'm with, that's my geezer. And Jen was scary. And the bird would just quickly get up and go, and that would be the end of it. I'd never have to see her again. So we used to laugh about it. Jen would go and do that for me, or, you know, like, anything, things like that. Me, Dave and Jen was close.
It was a solid team.
It was a team. Like, I don't say, Jen will tell you about this. I had some bird at my flat once, and she was harmless really, but I thought she was a bit, might wanted to stay, you know what I mean? And I had to go
bit
work.
clingy.
Yeah, I had to go work on a Monday morning, right? So I've quickly drove round Dave's when he lived in the flat with Jen, and I went, Dave, I rang him up. I said, Dave, I've got a problem. Can you come down? So he's thinking now, oh, what's he done? Has he shagged someone's bird? Has he got, you know what I mean? He's thinking, what's he done? And I ain't told him what it really is. I went, I just need a bit of help here, Dave. So he's put the Timberlands on, he's put the tracksuit on, he's got the dusters in, and he's coming down in the lift with me, and I'm going, he went, well, what's happened? I went, oh, Dave, all it is really, and as we got out the lift, I went, all it is, Dave, I've got a bird in the flat. I had to get rid of her. And I said, you'd drive her home? He went, what? I said, well, you know, I said you'd take her home in the roller. And he went, you fucking what? I went, I just said you'd take her home. I said, please don't mug me off. She's over there now. And I said, I've got to go to work, Dave. I just didn't want to leave her in the flat. She only lives at, you know, Dartford, Swanley way. Will you do it? And he went, and I've made sure I got a few steps away from him because I could see him thinking, should I punch him? and they used to have a chauffeur's hat on the back window. You can ask Jim this, right? So as he's walking towards the car, I went, Dave. He went, what? I said, do us a favour. He went, what? I said, would you wear the hat? And he's just got in the car. And this girl's going, oh, I can't believe he's getting you to take me home. He went, oh, I wouldn't worry, love. You're the third one this week. Just to make her feel that I was being a... You know what I mean? But he'd done it because he loved me, and he'd done it because he thought it was half funny. Do you know what I mean? But we would play pranks like that on each other. He's done things like that to me.
When you got banged up,
yeah.
Why did you go to jail? And then tell people watching and listening how you got greeted when you were released.
Well, I'm a bit embarrassed on why I went to jail. I went to jail for common assault on a traffic warden.
Oh, for someone who don't fight. People will love the fact it's a traffic warden.
Yeah, it was a woman, by the way.
Brendan. Fucking hell.
I look back with embarrassment now on it, but I was young. I was a bit wild at the time, do you know what I mean? And at that time in my life, Dave was in hospital. He'd been in a car accident. I was in a bit of pain. It was hurting me. And it was a bit unjust how she gave me the ticket that day. She slapped the ticket on the car. When there was no one there, I literally ran out of the car, put some dry cleaning in. The guy in the dry cleaning place went, he went, she's a cunt. So I quickly ran out, and I was no more than 2 minutes walking across the road back. There was no other car there. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and she didn't even get it in the paper. She just slapped it on the window before I could, get in the car. And I just said to her, why are you doing that? You know, what is the point? There's no traffic here. There's nothing here. You know what I mean? Why are you doing that? Why do you have to be such a c-? She went, you can't talk to me like that. My husband's a police officer. I was like, oh, yeah. I said, oh. And at the time, I really regretted it afterwards. And it was a terrible thing to do, but I used to smoke Bensons. I was smoking at the time. And it was a woman. I couldn't hit her as, it would have been wrong to hit her. And it is disrespectful what I've done, and I do look back in shame there, but I just spat on her fucking forehead, coughed up a big greenie, hit her on the forehead, and it slid down, and I got in the motor and drove off. And by the way, her husband was a police officer, and I did go to prison for it.
I've never heard of anyone go to jail for spitting on someone.
I did. That's what I got prison for, and I didn't do myself no favours. As I said, I was a very young man at the time. I was still quite wild. I was eating. I was doing, I was living that lifestyle where I didn't give a fuck. And when I went for probation, I was so annoyed that I tried to tell the truth about it, that her husband was a serving police officer. And I said to the judge, well, he is a serving police officer. We've established that. And I said, so what she's done really is wrong as a public person. She's threatening me with that. So, I did lose my temper, and I'm sorry about what I've done, but I'm telling the truth. And he went, I don't believe you. He went, you got lucky. I said, well, how would I have known? He went, you made a lucky guess. So I said, well, I suppose you want the lottery numbers for Saturday then, do you? Taking the piss and all that. And then he went, take him down, all that, go away for your pre-sentencing and with probation. And like a fucking idiot on the pre-sentencing, when the woman's asking me, I've been convicted, how do you feel? And I said, well, I feel that seeing as I could go to prison, I wish I'd have given her a kick up the arse now, to be honest. So, like an idiot to say that to your probation person, right? So when I went back to court to be sentenced, the judges actually, and I've said to a couple of people who come there, and they was making a bit of a documentary at the time about me, and I went, I'm going to go to court, it'd probably be a bit of community service, I'm going to take the piss doing that, we'll have a laugh doing it, don't worry. Anyway, I went into court, and they read out, so, you were going to kick her up the arse, were you? He said, so, you'll be going to prison, take him down 2 months. And I went, prison? What, me? Go to prison? Fucking hell, what's that about? Straight off to Belmarsh. Right, so
fucking hell.
Straight into Belmarsh, do you know what I mean? And I was like, and I hadn't prepared. I'd just gone in a T-shirt and jeans and just gone there with nothing. You know what I mean? So I went into Belmarsh, and I've got to be honest, right, as I said in that documentary, I don't think prison does you any harm whatsoever. Right? I think in a lot of ways it wouldn't do everyone no harm to go and have a month in prison, like just to actually make you understand a bit more about life. You know what I mean? It weren't the end of the world. I didn't find it that bad. It made me realise that, you know, appreciate the bit of freedom you've got. Do you know what I mean? I was disrespectful at the time. That punishment, I was worthy of it. You know what I mean? I had no complaints about it when I sat in there afterwards and thought I'd been a fucking idiot.
Did you ever spit at another traffic warden again?
Never,
after
ever in my life, ever again. Never spat at no one since.
So it done its job.
It done its job. Do you know what I mean? I can honestly say the system rehabilitated me on that issue.
And when you got released from jail, that day when they let you out, who was you greeted by and what were they wearing?
Well, coming out of prison, I didn't know. I was in the holding cell, and one of the officers, Screws, come over at me and he said, which one of you's Courtney's mate? So straight away I went, that'd be me. He went, oh, is it? He said, well, he's making the right of things out there, so you're in here for the afternoon. I went, what? He went, he's out there taking the piss. He went, so we're keeping you in for the afternoon. And they kept me in. Like, if you ever see the video, they have to wait hours for me to get out. But Dave couldn't have paid me more love and respect. He got a white limousine, and he had a couple of the motorcycle boys. I won't mention their name, but he had them. And he had a few of the other people come and greet me, and they just made me laugh. From the day I got out, I was back to normal, laughing, you know what I mean? I respected that I'd earned that punishment. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd had quite an easy time through it. I think people complain about prison when really, if you're in there for whatever reason, that's why it's there. Do you know what I mean? So I thought the food was fucking excellent in there, to be honest.
Don't let your missus hear you say that.
No, it's nowhere near as good as hers. But if you ever go to hospital, the food in hospital ain't nowhere near as good as what you'd get in prison.
When Dave was waiting outside the jail for you all afternoon, what was he wearing?
Well, he was dressed in it weren't a police outfit. It's like a Screws outfit, and he had a policeman's hat on. And he'd actually, when I see the video afterwards, he'd parked the bike in the middle of Plumstead High Street and started directing the traffic on the way down there. And he had a big chain hanging off his trousers with a massive bunch of silly keys, and he's had a knuckle duster hanging on his bunch of keys. Right, so obviously you couldn't do that today. And all they were moaning about him was he filming? But to turn up with all them people, how he did, and make me laugh. As I come out of there, I just had to laugh. They took me up the pub. We had a giggle. We had a laugh.
Wearing a policeman's hat.
He had all medals from the army. I think he had a German Iron Cross on. So anything that was zany, wacky and funny, Dave would do it to make you laugh.
Good for a crack, wasn't he?
Everything, every single... That is why every day of my life with Dave, right, was worth it. Because the good days were really, really good. On the bad days, we did have bad and sad days, but even along one of them moments in that bad and sad day, we'd find one thing to make us laugh. If it was for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then we'd have to get back to dealing with what we was doing. But we had that every single day with no matter what it was.
Do you remember the first sad day? Because Dave sounds like he's just one big, long barrel of laughs. So there must have been a moment where you thought, cool, this is out of sync. This is normally fun, but this isn't fun.
Probably the real start of the decline was around the 2010s, 2011. If I'm really honest, I think the biggest impact at that time was Jensen's passing. I wasn't actually in London at that time because I'd lived in the Wendy House for a year, and I ended up moving out of Dave's, and a fella gave me an house to live in for a year. And I sort of weren't squatting. I was living in his house, doing it up for him. But I was taking time out, if you like. But an opportunity come up to go and work in Scotland for me. So it was about 2010. It was just after the World Cup in 2010. and I ended up going up to Scotland. The promise of this job when I got there was £1,000 a week, and it was doing this big demolition job. It was what I knew. And when I got there, there'd been a problem with asbestos on this job, and it was stopped. So I ended up, working in Manchester, and I ended up working in Middlesbrough. So I didn't really like working with this firm. They weren't my cup of tea. They was Geordies. They didn't like me. I was a Cockney. I didn't, you know what I mean? There was that little bit of, we didn't get on. Do you know what I mean? I knew I was going to get the sack because I was going to tell them to fuck off at some point. So I thought, I really need to but I had nowhere to live. So I'm living in their digs, you know what I mean? And I thought, if I get the sack here, I'm homeless as well. And I went out on a Sunday night in Middlesbrough, and as luck would have it, I met a lady there, and we got on really well. We had a giggle and all that. And she just loved the fact that I was a Cockney, which was so refreshing because everyone else seemed to hate it out there. Right?
Everyone else held it against you.
Upshot of it was I moved in with her. The nickname of where she lived was Dog Shit Green, so that'll give you an idea of the standard of the place. But the very first night I've moved in with her, this geezer's come tearing in a car. We was in a cul-de-sac, and he's coming in a car, and he's run out of the car, and there's old Bill behind him, and he's run in the house, and he's gone upstairs, and you see all these tiles popping off the roof from inside the house, and he's up on the roof going, "Come and get me, you bastards, wankers." And it's all old Bill turning up, and he's standing on the roof. All of a sudden, he's slipped, and he's come off the roof, landed on the green. Dad broke his back, and they've just nicked him. And I thought, wow, this is going to be interesting living here. It's my first night here. But, I ended up living in it. It was quite funny. It was colourful. It was a bit like another version of Shameless. Do you know what I mean? It had its nuttiness, but I just kept myself to myself and done whatever I was doing. And Dave eventually got in touch with me. I'd seen in the paper that Jensen had been killed, right? So it was a bit of a shock, I hadn't had no contact really for about a year with Dave and the whole people down south. I was just stuck up there, and I thought, fuck it, I'm just going to get on with it and do my own thing here and use it to get better. And Dave rang me up. It was January time, and he'd been in prison. He'd come out, and he said to me, I'm fucking freezing down here. It was a really, really bad winter, 2010-11, like where I was in Middlesbrough. I think it's 2011-12, but the snow up in Middlesbrough was about 3 foot deep, and it lasted for a month. They had a proper white Christmas up there, so I know it was fucking cold, right? So he's rung me. He's in London. He went, "It's fucking cold down here." He went, "I've come out of Nick." Him and Jenna split up. He said, "I've come out of Nick." He said, "I've got fuck all, Bryn. I'm burning the fucking wooden fence panels of people's gardens and for sale signs in the living room. I've got no electric. It's freezing." And I said to him, "You're not selling it to me, Dave." He went, "Where are you then?" And I said, "Well, I'm in Middlesbrough, Dave. I'm in a 3-bedroom semi, 55-inch telly, bit of central heating, and I'm getting my cocks up every day. So, no disrespect. Like, can you give me a ring back in the summer?" He went, "What?" I said, "Well, there's no point in me coming down there at the minute when it's like that, is there? There's no point in two of us being cold, Dave." And he went, "Are you fucking serious?" I went, "Well, yeah, I can't just walk out on this bird up here. I've been with her a little while, and, I did tell her I was always going back to London, but my own gut thing was, fuck that, it sounds too cold. I'm a bit more comfortable up here, I won't lie." And so he went, "All right, I'll speak to you later then." And he rang me back in May, and he went, "Listen, are you coming back or what?" I went, "Yeah, all right, now I suppose I'll have to come back, Dave. Weather's a bit better now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?" And then I come back to London in 2012. But in that period of time, I'm afraid Dave had changed a lot. Them 2 or 3 years that with things that had happened with Jensen's passing, some bits and pieces of other ag, I weren't even there, so I didn't really know the full SP on a lot of things. So, but I come back and I could see Dave weren't in a good place, and it weren't like it was, you know what I mean, from what we'd had. So he'd started to drink now, Dave. That is the one difference I'd noticed. You know what I mean? He'd started drinking, and he was doing a bottle of brandy most days. Because he could take a bit of whiz, you wouldn't even know he was pissed, really. Do you know what I mean? And
that's the balance.
And they were sort of knocking each other out. One was counteracting the other.
That was Dave's depression.
That was Dave's depression. Now he weren't as funny, and now the bubbly Dave that kept me going, I really was there to try and pick him up.
So by this stage, Jensen had already been killed?
Jensen passed. I think his uncle was on remand for it. And I come back in around May 2012, and I think the end of the court case where he was found guilty and was sentenced around that time. Dave had no doubt. He believed it was the uncle. He didn't have an issue with that. You know, he really did believe it was the uncle.
What made him believe it was the uncle? This is Jen's brother.
Jen's brother. Well, you know, like when he'd been in prison with Jensen, and he had told me that Jensen had told him that he had problems with the uncle. They weren't getting on, you know, and there was issues. And Dave went, "Don't be stupid. That's your family." And he did say to me afterwards, he went, "Had I known how bad it was, I probably would have tried to do something, but I didn't realise the issues with him and David were that bad." And I mean, I've got to say here, Liam, at this point, I don't know whether his uncle done it, and it's not for me to say he did. I can only say what Dave told me. So it's not my view. My view is this: if there is any bit of evidence to prove that man is innocent, I would ask that someone look at that case and open it up, and let's be sure. Right? But on the other hand, if he's guilty of that, and Dave always believed this, that he didn't have the courage to look Jennifer in the eye and say, "I've killed your only son." That's why he went not guilty all the time. That's why even now I don't think he's admitted it. But Dave believed that. He believed he was guilty, and he believed that, you know, David just didn't have the heart to tell Jen what he'd done. He was that much deeply ashamed of it and saddened by it that he just didn't have the courage to tell her.
I want to say a couple of things here on this, because I've obviously interviewed Jenny. I'm really fond of Jenny, and I encourage anybody that hasn't seen Jenny's interview with me to go back. In fact, go back and watch. This is the trilogy. These are all the missing pieces between the three interviews. Go back and listen to and watch Dave's interview with me, and then Jenny's, and now Brendan's if you've just come in and it's just Brendan's that you've seen. Because I sat with Jenny, and Jenny's got a very different view on that. So I just want to highlight that in case anyone hasn't seen that interview, just because I feel like I owe Jenny that.
Of course, yeah. And I've still got a good relationship with Jen. You know what I mean? She was Dave's wife, and we're still good friends, right? And I can understand the pain. She's never been the same since she lost Jensen. There's no doubt about that. And I would like this as closure for her and everyone who's involved and has got love for either his side of the family and the other side of the family, because that family is split with did he or didn't he. Some people say he did, some say he didn't. Other people in the family just don't talk about it. So it's like an elephant in the room. Right? I would love at some point, hopefully the closure comes when, like I said, if there is anything to prove the innocence of him and the other guy that are in there, then please someone dig it up and then maybe find out what really happened. But the evidence seemed quite compelling is what I understood. Right? So, and if Dave is right, and usually Dave's gut feeling on things, I would say was pretty much bang on. And his attitude or his feeling was he could see Jen was hurting, and Jen's only been loving and loyal to her family. And if her brother has said to her, "No, I didn't do it," she's standing by him. You can't knock her for that. That's a badge of honour that she should be proud of, to stand up and do that for her brother. But if the fact is her brother is lying and he can't face telling her, at some point he needs to get that. He needs to let that go and tell her the truth, to give her closure, to let her heal as well. And it's, please, I want everyone to understand, this is not me saying that he's guilty. I don't know the truth. Only he knows what happened that day. I'm going on what Trident spoke to Dave about when I witnessed them coming to the house after the murder, after the court case, and how they explained it to Dave. And it, like I said, I don't know if there's any other issues. I wasn't at the court case. I don't know everything. I weren't in London when it happened. I can only go on the bits that I know. And from my heart, I just hope that somewhere along the line, they face the truth in some way, or they find the truth, because the only way they can all rest in their souls is if they face the truth. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really sad thing. The young man's life has been lost, right? Another man is going to spend 31 years in prison. There's no winners in that situation. But if there could be some good come out of it, some healing process, it would have to be only through the truth. You can only heal with the truth. And if on that day that something went wrong that wasn't meant to happen, and these things happen in reality of life, if that is the case, you know, like at some point I hope they find a way of getting it out and discovering it. At the moment, I think he's had 2 appeals that have been turned down. I don't understand it or know the depth of it, so I'm not making any comment on judgment on it. I'm just telling what I think. And what I would hope at the end of this scenario is, if that man is in there for another 20 years in prison, you know, if he's genuinely innocent and he's going to spend the rest of his life saying he didn't do it, you know, like, I think he'll get punished more because they're saying you're not accepting your guilt. But if there is a point where he's in prison, he knows he's got another 20 years, what is the right thing to do? If you haven't done it, you've got to say you didn't do it. But if you have done it and you just haven't had the courage yet to find a way, you know, I'm just saying, your sister is out here hurting on the outside. Her children are hurting. Her family have to live with that elephant in the room. All right? And if there's any way of mending that and making everyone feel better, you know, I'd love that to be the scenario, that good and forgiveness comes from it at the end. That's what I really pray and hope for.
It's unbelievably sad how that all materialised and how there's still no closure. So that's obviously looming over everybody's head. Conflict within, probably in-house arguing, I'd imagine, fractures everywhere.
There's fractures everywhere in the family and around the whole situation. Dave felt he never got a chance to mourn Jensen because he wanted Jensen's funeral to go from his house, but it was taken out of his hands and it was taken, you know, from Jen's side of the family, from their house. So although Dave had a lot of input into the funeral, do you know what I mean? He felt, he said to me, he said, I'm, you know, never really had a chance to mourn Jensen properly. And on top of that, I mean, he was drinking badly for, you know, 4, 5, maybe 6 years. His drinking got worse and worse. And one day, because I used to get frustrated with him, and the funny thing was, Liam, when he weren't drinking, I could speak to Dave maybe for half an hour. I'd have the old Dave, we'd have a bit of banter, and then he'd be starting to get pissed, and then it'd be like, oh, do you know what I mean? People are different when they're drinking.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Especially if you're depressed.
Yeah. And he had, you know, when I list off the things that happened to him in this period of his life, one after the other. So he loses his son, Jensen. We classed as a son, although he was his stepson. Dave classed him as a son, treated him as one, loved him as one, honoured him as one. Loses his life partner in Jennifer, right? Loved her with all his heart. That relationship breaks. It's unmendable, you know. So he said to me, it was about 2 or 3 years afterwards, I went, fucking hell, Dave, why are you so much on the piss? And he went, because of Jennifer. He said, I'm the only way I can numb the pain is this. He went, and I'm sorry. Right? And I went, all right, I get it. Do you know what I mean? It was sad, but I could understand his pain.
It's fair to say that was no ordinary love.
No. It's an exceptional love. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very rare. And anyone who knows them two knows what it was. right? And for me at that time, coming back to Dave, coming back into his life, I had to take a bit more responsibility and start to make things happen financially for us. So although Dave was a really good entertainer, business-wise, Dave just had no respect for money, didn't care about material things, where I had to start making decisions to make us some money and earn some money. Do you know what I mean? So I actually... The bottom of the garden, which had now been turned into like a little shed, I started to see the potential in it, and I got someone playing a bit of music in there, and I started selling beers in there on a Saturday, and it was the start of the Camelot Club, if you like, in the back garden. That's how it started. I was taking Dave's bookings for his shows. Do you know what I mean? And what he used to do, Dave, Dave could be pissed all week. But come that Friday or Saturday when he had to go and do a show, he'd take a load of whiz, go out there, and he could do it. You know, like a bit like George Best would go and play football when he was pissed. Dave could go and do that talk, come off stage, get back on the piss again, and just go back into where he was. Do you know what I mean? And it was...
He could hide it better than Oliver Reed.
He could hide it really well. Don't get me wrong, there was times when he did get pissed in front of people, and he has... You know, he would say upwards, oh, fuck me, I wish I hadn't have said that. Do you know what I mean? But he could be spiteful, but still funny with the comments. Do you know what I mean? But they were quite cutting. But that's alcohol, isn't it? That's not him talking. That's the alcohol talking.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Steer clear from depressants if you're depressed.
If you're depressed, it ain't the way forward.
No way.
Do you know what I mean? But he really had, you know, like... That's where Dave was. He was lost. I can't imagine the pain he must have been in.
Yeah, it's very easy saying stay away from depressants when you're depressed, but until you've lost your son and your wife.
On top of that, Dave had his first bout of arthritis. That was the one that come first, right? He got he'd gone up to Morecambe, done a show up there. And I've told this story before, but there was a Polish guy, I think he was Polish, and Dave was up in Morecambe. A lot of the people there Dave would go and chat to everyone before his show. Dave would treat a show where there was 5 or 15 people in a bar that he'd gone to do a show, or if there was 150 or 1,000, he treated it all the same. He'd go and speak to all the people first. There weren't no airs and graces about him. He preferred to be out with the audience. Do you know what I mean? And he was in this pub up in Morecambe, and he was chatting to some of the people in there, and they were quite pleased to have him up there. But one guy, I think he was a local sort of bit of a henchman or buddy boy up there, and he said to Dave, oh, you come from London, yeah? Don't talk gangster, show me gangster. All right? And Dave went to me, he went, oh, I knew this geezer was, and he went, he would beat me if I started rolling about with him. He went, you know, I didn't fancy it, but I thought I can't let him, you know, he's going to do me or he's going to start on me. He could sense it, yeah. So, as I said, in true British gangster fashion, Dave waited until he was standing at the urinal having a piss, went in with his 2 dusters and went, I'm now going to show you gangster. And smashed him to bits while he had his cock in his hand. Didn't give him a chance. You know what I mean? Dave wouldn't want me to tell you a lie. Dave took full advantage to make sure he did not lose. Right? And anyone who's in that life will understand that. Yeah? You know, the guy had the advantage. He was younger and fitter. Dave had to level it up by taking an opportunity when he weren't expecting it. Right? So,
It's kill or be killed.
Something like that. Yeah, and Dave weren't going to leave there being embarrassed when people had booked him.
Also, if you can sense and you know that someone is definitely going to attack you,
yeah, right.
What'd you do?
Well, exactly. So the guy had to be taken out there. They had to tie a tea towel round his chin because his jaw had popped off. You know, Dave would give him, like, he definitely was aware of what gangster was when Dave left. You know what I mean? But David got one of his teeth stuck in his knuckles, pulled it out. Didn't really think nothing of it, and he was going to leave the bar because he was embarrassed about it happening. But everyone said, no, stay and do the show, Dave. You know, he was a bit of a bully. We didn't like him anyway. You've half done us a favour. So he stayed up there and done the show. right? A couple of weeks later, he'd started feeling ill and he just started swelling up his arm and he was just really getting ill. We didn't know what it was, didn't really know, but I knew for Dave because I went out one day, I had to go out and I was out for the day with someone and Dave actually took himself to hospital. So for him to go to hospital, he was in a bad way because he wouldn't go unless he really had to. So he went in hospital. When he's in there, they said to him, you've got some form of blood poisoning. So, and he still had the scar from where the tooth had gone in his knuckle. And he's told them, and they said, well, that could be it because a tooth is the most dirtiest thing. Your mouth is very, very bad for bacteria. So they think that had caused the septicemia. So they give him a load of these antibiotics really strong because they were worried about it getting to his kidneys. Because if it had got there, he would have obviously died. He'd have started to shut down. So they filled him up really quickly with whatever medication it was going to take, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that medication triggered his arthritis. So he was 3 weeks in Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And although the markers for the blood thing and the poisoning had come down, he couldn't move and he was in pain.
So what year was this?
About 2014. That's 10 years ago now, yeah. So he was like, they took him from there to St Thomas's and there was, at one point, he had a tennis ball on his knee and they lanced it and there was like half a litre of orangey pus liquid come out of it. He was bad. He was really, really ill. And even when he was in St Thomas's, he fucking looked ill. And he was in the tropical diseases department. I went, fuck me, Dave, you've done well. You got in the tropical diseases. You only live in Plumstead. So, when he's in there, the doctors have come round and they've said to him, Dave, look, we think what's happened is the medication we've given you, we had to give it to you because of the issues you've had, but we think it's triggered your arthritis. We think it's enhanced it, and, we're sorry, but that's what's happened. All right, so I said, you can go home, there's nothing we can do, it's just arthritis. But he literally went into hospital, he walked into hospital, and he come home in a wheelchair. He actually come home, and it was in his wrists, his knees, his ankles, his elbows. And if you've ever felt anyone with arthritis when they're getting it, all their joints get really hot.
Right.
If you put your hand near their joint, when their arthritis is eating them or getting into their system, you can feel the heat on them. But it just is so debilitating as an illness.
Aggressive.
This was aggressive rheumatoid arthritis, right? And he couldn't even pick up a knife and fork, right? He couldn't hold a pen. Do you know what I mean? And that was the first time that Dave said to me in his life, Bren, he went, listen, if this is what it's going to be, you fucking got to put a pillow over my head and fucking do a year inside if you have to. He went, because I ain't living like this. He went, I can't do this. And he went, if you've got to, I'm fucking telling you to do it. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, thanks. You know what I mean? It was sad, but it was a serious issue at the time because I half could see in his eyes that he half meant it. And I went, stop it, Dave, it ain't that bad. It'd be all right. But, the pain to him at that time and the embarrassment of being in a wheelchair and coming home, I had to pick him up, take him out of the hospital in a wheelchair and get him into the car. And he struggled to get into the house. He was housebound for a month after that, really couldn't do fuck all. And we took him up to Guy's, the Guy's medical rheumatoid arthritis people, who, by the way, done a really good job. There's a doctor called Toby Garud, his consultant, and he was a really good man, nice man. He took Dave in and he was honest with him. He said, look, Dave, the arthritis, how it works is we're going to have to wait 5 or 6 months for this to get properly into your body because we don't know what to treat it with at the moment until we find out where it's going to go, where it's going to affect you. Right? But he said, I'll try and give you some painkillers, but you went, just remember no one's died of pain. And that was his, Dave went, fuck me, is that it? Is that the best you're going to give me? But it was the incapacity thing that really was fucking Dave off, right? After about 3 or 4 months, they found a drug called Simzia, which is a preloaded injection. And they said to Dave, come up, we'll give you this drug, see if it works. If it does, we'll give you a course of these and you have to take it every fortnight. It's preloaded injection. We'll send it to your house. And I thought, wow, and it worked, Liam. It absolutely changed his life. It was like a miracle drug. All right, so that took him out of the depression. That happening to him started to take him out of the depression a little bit.
And how long did that stint of depression last?
7, 8 months at least. Do you know what I mean? It was a bad one. It was heavy, and like I said, still boozing. Do you know what I mean? So then after that, his teeth are starting to get a bit loose. He's starting to get issues with his teeth. And a friend of ours went, listen, if you go out to Turkey, Dave, get your teeth done out there. He went like, best thing I ever done. I'll recommend this bloke. Go out and see him. He ain't a bodge thing. They look after you. So me and Dave, being as fucking stupid as we are, the very first time we went to Turkey, we didn't realise that in the price when you go there, they pay for your hotel. So like we're trying to be a bit, do we want to pay for a big flash hotel? We're only out there. We're not really going to be going out. But our mate had a villa out there. So he went, you can stay in my villa, Dave. So, but had we known properly, the hotel was coming in the price. So we've ended up staying in this villa, which was an hour outside Antalya. And the geezer's villa, it had no English TV. We were miles from anywhere. It was lovely. Don't get me wrong. It was lovely and it was sunny. But there weren't fuck all there to do. He was sitting there and me and him, we found like a kids' bingo game. We're sitting in there on our second night doing bingo. And a couple of the balls with the numbers was missing. I worked out which ones they were. So I made sure I got the sheet that didn't have and I kept winning. He found out on the third day that I'd been cheating, Dave. But we had to play bingo for about 3 nights, just me and him sitting there.
To kill the time.
To kill the time. We had fucking French news 24/7, which was in French. So we're just looking at that with the sound down and like it was shit. Right, but so he's got over the arthritis issue, goes to Turkey. This is the following year, I think. And Dave went, Dave, your teeth are fucked, mate. Absolutely fucked. All you can do is pull the whole lot out, pull everything out. We'll put you some pins in, give you 6 temporary teeth at the top and bottom, come back in 6 months and we'll fit your teeth. So he's like, went, what? They said, well, look, there's the x-ray. This is what it is. You've had 30 years of whiz, drinking Coke with a brandy, everything. You've now got no teeth. They're rotten. They're moving. And he said to me, what do you think? I went, well, look, we're here, Dave. You know what I mean? It's $9,000. We've got the money. Fucking get it done. Just do it. If it's going to make you feel better. Now, the first visit when you go out there, they recommend you do about 10 days because they've got to pull all your teeth out, let you have a day's rest. And it's major trauma, Liam, when you have these teeth done. It's a major trauma to your body and to your mind and everything, right? So he's now only got a week. They've got to get everything done. They went, right, Dave, since you're only here for a week, we can't have no rest. Come in tomorrow, we'll start this next phase. So the next day they get a scalpel, slice open your gum, peel it back, and then they got to get a hammer and a centre punch, right? And they've got to, before they can drill into your bone, they get the hammer and the centre punch and they go, whack. You can see Dave's head and all this Turkish geezer can say to him, pain? And Dave's having to go because he's the gates. He's going, oh. And he's going, bang, right? Well, the bit I forgot to mention, where Dave was still on the piss at this time, they said to him, don't drink, don't come over here, you can't drink, blah, blah, blah. Dave is absolutely rotten on the plane. He's had 3 booze on the plane. So he stepped off and the following day he stinks like a brewer. He's gone in the dentist and he's going, no, I only had a couple of drinks, and they weren't happy about it. So when they've gone to give him the painkillers 2 days later, they've done a blood test and they went, fuck me, he's full of alcohol. We can't give him the painkillers. You know, we can't give him what he wants. So now he's having to have this work done without the painkillers. Right? And literally what they do, Liam, they have to get a centre punch, bang it with a hammer to get a hole for the drill to fit on. And then the drill drills into your bone, but it drills like a part into your bone that they can screw into. So they had to do 3 of them on the top and 3 on the bottom. So they do 3 on one day, and trust me, that is fucking. Just watching it is painful. And he's having to
listening to you tell me about it is painful.
So the first day he's come out with his teeth in, right? He's only got 6 here, and he went, "Tell me the truth. What do I look like?" And because I'm a piss taken, right, I went, "Here, Dave, I'll tell you what. Do you remember the vicar in Dick Emery?" He went, "What?" I said, "You remember that vicar geezer in Dick Emery?" I went, "You look like him." He went, "If you fucking say that to anyone else, I'm punching you in the face. Don't you fucking say that in front of anyone." So I went, "Oh, all right," you know what I mean? But that was a major trauma going through that. Trust me, that is a major trauma on your mind and definitely his body. He hurt a lot with that, right? So,
well, that'll put you in a state of shock.
Yeah,
no
definitely.
anaesthetic, and you're getting
didn't have no anaesthetic, you know, like I said. But so he'd had the arthritis issue, then he had his teeth, and I think we're moving up to 2017, 2018 now. This is all, you take this in 3 years, like 14 to 18, 3 or 4 years. He then gets, he has like a sort of heart attack at home, right? I'll get him up the hospital, and they go, "You've had a heart attack, Dave."
Is that because of the booze and whiz?
I would imagine just a hard lifestyle. He was smoking loads of weed, boozing, like Dave was gaining it, you know what I mean? He was fucking giving it some, right? And
you got to give it to him, haven't you?
yeah,
I
listen,
mean,
he
did not slow down.
Listen, I've never seen anyone drink, take drugs and fuck like he did for his whole life. Do you know what I mean? He obviously slowed up in the last few years, but fuck me, that was an absolute monster on drink, drugs and shagging. You know what I mean? He didn't miss anything. So when he's gone to the hospital, they said, "You've got a leaking valve in your heart." And he seemed to get it in his head that it was like one of them stent things they were going to do. But they said to him, "You've got to have an operation, Dave. We're going to give you an aorta valve." But whether it was a drink or whether it Dave's head, he just got convinced that it was, that's just like doing a stent thing. Right? But it ain't. It's a 7-hour operation. They're going to cut your rib cage open your chest out, take your heart out, keep it, you know, like they've got to sew a pig's valve onto your aorta valve and keep you alive while they do it. It's a major operation. So anyway, we gets up to hospital and all that, and then as it's got closer and closer and they're explaining it to him, he went, "You know what, they're going to cut my rib cage. They saw your rib cage open, and they have to get into it, right?" He went, "Fucking hell." And I went, "Well, I've been telling you, Dave." He went, "Well, that ain't a stent." I went, "I know it ain't a stent." I said, "I've been trying to tell you that." He went, "Fucking hell." So he's now like, his arsehole's going a little bit. He ain't over keen on this one. Do you know what I mean? Anyways, he's in the hospital, and I went, "Dave, you've got to have it done." You know, they said next heart attack, because you've got a leaking valve, that could be the end of it. You know what I mean? This valve gives you another like 15, 20 years at least. So they sew it onto you. It's a pig's valve. He could have had a plastic one, which you can hear it ticking. But he said, "No, I'll have the pig's one." So he's had the pig's valve and he's in hospital. And this, when I explain how crazy the life was, even in this time with Dave, I'm going to set the scene for you now. So he was with a Welsh bird at the time. He was seeing Debbie and he was seeing another girl.
How old was he?
Late 50s, 57, 58.
Multiple women on the go.
He's got multiple women on the go. He's a proper fucking, he does love a drink, Dave. Still does a bit of whiz. Still carries on like a 30-year-old, right? He's popping Viagra like there is one of his 5 a day. So he's ended up, at the time, he had some little Indian bird come to the house for a party, And she ended up staying there. And he used to say, oh, she's like Pocahontas. And I went, Dave, she's like Mowgli. At the same time, Liam, this is how nutty our life was. We had 2 dominatrix in the dungeon down the bottom of the garden. We used to rent the dungeon to them. And to be honest, they were just funny. What was happening down there for me was funny to watch and see, right? So on the day of Dave's operation now, he's going in for this 7-hour operation. I'm on the way up there with this. I've got the Indian birds at the house. I've got to try and get rid of her later on. I've got another bird I'm taking up to the hospital to see him, right? And on the way up there, I've rung him. He went, oh, I've got the Welsh bird here. Try and keep her downstairs for a bit. I went, fucking hell, they're going, you mustn't have any stress today, Dave. It's a serious thing, right? So this is on the day of the operation, right? So anyway, the Welsh bird's gone. He went, yeah, come up now. So I've gone up and he's going to me, how's things going? I went, well, never mind how things going, Dave. You've got to relax, do you know what I mean? Get ready, it's a big thing. So they was getting ready to sedate him and pre-op and all that, yeah. And this little Chinese nurse there, she come over, but she didn't realise what she said, but it was so funny for me. She's looked at me and she went, don't worry, we look after your dad. He'd be safe with us. And he's looked at me and thought, oh, fucking leave off. I'm going, all right, Dad. All right, so I've now let him go in. He's going in for the 7-hour operation. And I was like, it's an uncomfortable thing knowing your mate's having that big an operation. Do you know what I mean? That can go wrong. You could die. You know what I mean? There's no guarantees with any part of life, all right? But they said to me, go home. There's nothing you can do now. Just go home. It's going to be 7 hours. So I went home and we had a caravan on the drive and my mate, who was a black cab driver, was living in the van. All right, so I've gone home and I've now got to explain to this Indian bird that she's got to go. But I also get a phone call from one of the dominatrix. And you've got to get back here. You've got to get back here. There's a fucking problem here with me and Piggy Mouth and the Gimp. That in itself is a funny conversation, do you know what I mean? I'm going, all right then, I'll be back in a little while. Right, so I've gone straight back, see the Indian guy, and I'm going, right, listen, you're going to have to go, baby, yeah? You know, it's time for you to go now. And she went, I need to see Dave. I said, no, you can't see Dave, he's in hospital. She went, but I need to see him. I've got some personal issues. I went, oh, yeah? And she's pointing at her lower regions. I went, if you've got a fucking dose, you better tell me because he's having an operation. She went, how dare you? She went, I'm with child. I went, all right, well, that's all right. Don't worry about that. You still got to go. I said, you can sort that out with him after, but I need you to go now. Like, you can't stay here. You know what I mean? That's it, please. You got to go. So I'm sort of dealing with that. And then I've got the other bird going, come down here. I need this sorting out with the Gimp. Right? So I go into the dungeon. And this is the scene. My mate's having a 7-hour operation. And in the dungeon is this little fat pot-bellied geezer with a gas mask on and a tiny little cock, and he's standing there wanking. And I've got one of the birds going, she is talking to my Gimp, and it's not professional. And I'm looking at the geezer, and he stopped wanking, and she went, did I say stop wanking? He went, and carries on. So I'm like, yeah, so what's the issue? And she went, she's talking to him. He's my Gimp. It's not professional. She mustn't talk to him. So I'm going, can you not talk to him then? Please don't talk to him. She went, oh, I just haven't had my medication today. I feel a little bit stressed. And she went, all I'd said was, do you want a cup of tea? And I went, would you mind just not talking to him then? And I went, now, you all right? You can carry on wanking. You all right? Yeah. I've got to go back.
As you were.
Out the Indian bird pack and get her out. I'm still thinking, how's he getting on? I went in the caravan and I said to Bill, I've got to be honest, Bill, you know, living here is some days it ain't half fucking challenging, mate. And then I'll get the phone call to say, right, go back up to the hospital. He's had the op. When I get up there, it had gone a little bit wrong in the respect of they'd restarted his heart and it was racing. It was like 150 beats per minute, which is like when you're running, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So they have to then give you some sort of drug or something to slow that down. And that's one of the big issues with any of them operations is how your heart restarts or how you go after. But he had a day, just over a day, where he was like, his heart was a bit iffy, and they slowed it down. And he had a big scar here, and he was in there for about a week, 10 days. And he often said to me afterwards, Dave, that's the worst thing I've ever done. He went, I shouldn't have had that operation. He went, I should have just fucking left it. And if I had a heart attack, I had a heart attack. I didn't care anyway. But the pain in that, Liam, when you come out of there, they staple your rib cage together.
Mm.
So when he comes out of there, even if I went over a tiny little bump on the road, he was in pain. He has to hold a cushion to his chest all the time. And if he coughed, the only way he could cough is if he held his chest together. Because when you cough, it makes your chest move, your rib cage. And he was that's another level of pain. So he'd had his teeth, he's had the arthritis, and now he's had that.
In the space of
3 years. And on top of that, to round it off, they said to him, they were doing blood tests on him because of the arthritis drug, and they went, Dave, we've done a blood test and your PSA's really high. So we want you to go and get your prostate checked. So he's gone in and they went, you've got an enlarged prostate. So now they've gone in a bit deeper and they went, you've got cancer of the prostate. Right, so imagine that. You've had your teeth pulled out, you've had the arthritis issue, you've had the heart issue, and now to round it off, not to mention you've lost your missus and your kids being killed in the space of 5 or 6 years. Now they're going, you've got cancer of the prostate. Right, so I was with him and Debbie. We went up the hospital to Guy's, and they said, Dave, you've got cancer of the prostate. What we can do is cut your prostate out. Obviously, you won't be able to get an erection, and it sort of kills your sex life. And he went, what? He said, fuck that. He said, I'll keep the cancer. And the doctor went, pardon? He went, I'll keep the cancer, mate. He went, I've got a sex dungeon in my garden. He went, and I like shagging. He went, I'd rather fucking have another year shagging and let the cancer fucking do me. But he went, I'm not cutting this out and not being able to get an hard on. You can forget that. And the doctor went, wow, that is so refreshing. When every man who comes in here goes, cut it out, and they don't seem to care. He went, Dave, I'm going to see if I can get you some new treatment. He went, if anyone deserves it, it's you. And it was a treatment called brachytherapy. And it involves them he has an operation again, and he's got his leg in stirrups now, and they inject into your scrotum. I would imagine it's some sort of radiation treatment, but they inject these balls into your scrotum. And he had, I can't remember, maybe 50, 60 different things injected in, and they literally dissolve in the scrotum over 2 years. Right, so, but what it did do was it stopped the cancer. It went from 2.5 down to 0.49 is cancer. So, but that then gave him an issue. Even after doing that, he couldn't get an hard on like he used to. Right. So, and then they went, well, you can't have Viagra because of your heart condition. Mm-hmm. So he was going, are you fucking sure? Right. And we always used to have a thing where I used to say to him, Jesus would never put anything on your shoulders that you can't cope with. He went, well, when I fucking see him, I'm punching him in the face. He went, because this is bollocks. He went, I can't fucking get an hard on. I've got an heart condition. I've got arthritis. And this was like about 2020, before lockdown. These issues were all coming together now as a bit as one. Do you know what I mean? Mm. But the Simzia was working, so that was keeping the arthritis at bay. Prostate cancer had affected him. He couldn't really shag like he used to, and he was taking Viagra anyway. He didn't care. Do you know what I mean? But he was still boozing, and he kept saying,
still whizzing,
doing a bit of whiz, not as prominent on the whiz as he was. And he also, because he had a gastric band as well before all that, he used to liquidize his food. And then he kept putting on weight. And I went, you're not meant to liquidize the fucking food, Dave. You're not meant to eat that much. You know what I mean? But he'd liquidize a roast dinner. and then he'd go, I can't work it out. I said, can't work it out. You're not meant to liquidize a roast fucking dinner. Whatever you told him or whatever you said, look, that's how you meant to do it. He just went, bollocks, I'm doing it how I want to do it. All right. So He was having issues with the weight, but he really didn't care at this point of his life, Liam. He was starting to show he didn't care, right? And he went into hospital with COVID. I can't remember when it was now, 2021. He got COVID, and because of his weight and his health issues, he got it quite bad. He was struggling to breathe, and he was, like, and they come and picked him up in an ambulance, took him into the hospital. But it was when the COVID thing was dying down. It weren't like all isolated like it was. It was near the end of the COVID thing. And he kept saying to me at that point in his life, he's going, I've had enough, Brent. I don't care anymore, you know what I mean? I really don't care. And I went to him when he had the COVID. I said, Dave, look, if you really don't care, I said, this is a time, and just, I love you anyway. If you go in here and that's it, I love you, fuck it, mate. Just, it don't matter. You know what I mean? If this is where it's going to be, because it did look like he was in real trouble with it. And I don't know what that done to him, Liam, but he come out of there. Bearing in mind, this was a man who was drinking a bottle, 2 bottles of brandy every day, smoking at least an 8th of weed, taking whiz, right? He went into the hospital like that. He was in there for 3 or 4 days, and he come out and he went, I'm stopping smoking, I'm stopping drinking, I'm stopping it all. And I went, yeah, all right, Dave, because he'd said that loads of times.
Well, by this stage, he'd been doing that for years.
Yeah, he'd been doing it for years. And he was one of them that if you went to someone, he's drinking 2 bottles of brandy a day, he's going to stop in one go, they'd go, oh, that'd kill him. Yeah? And I was a bit like, I said, I didn't actually think he's going to do it, to be honest. But he went, I'm coming home. He went, I'm knocking it on the head now. That's it. And I've never known anyone else to do this, Liam. He come home, and from that day, he stopped drinking, stopped smoking, didn't touch anything. And we was having parties, people was around him, and he was going, no. And there was subtle changes in the way he done things. And like I said, you can ask that Rocky Tirano, he went out on a December afternoon, a December morning, about 2-3 years, maybe 2 years ago, and it was fucking cold. And he sat there in a little Santa Claus outfit on the back of a transit, and it was a sleigh being towed by a transit. And he spent from 9 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night going round all these disabled children's houses and bringing presents to their door because they couldn't get out to see Santa. They were severely disabled, and it was too hard work for the parents. But he took it, Rocky asked him to do it. He went, I'll do it. Right? And he froze, Liam. He was freezing on this fucking... And every child that he met, he engaged with, and they smiled. Like I've got videos of it. Every child that no matter how severe their disability was, he got a smile out of them and they engaged with him. That was how special he'd become in his own way. It was his mission, do you know what I mean? He put his heart and soul into making everything that he could do right. He done it right.
And is this around 2021?
It's around 2021, yeah. And, things like we'd be out, he'd see someone sitting with nothing, he'd go and give them a £5. He'd go and buy someone on the street something to eat. Like, I'm not saying that Dave didn't do that, but he was now doing it predominantly a bit more. Dave was always a generous person, but he was sort of like, you're thinking, fucking hell, Dave, you're right. Do you know what I mean? And to him, like, life itself seemed to be in the background. Whatever we might have been looking at and going, oh, should we do this? We make money doing that. He had no interest in it, Dave. He was only really interested in, I now look at it, knowing the final chapter, that he was only interested in putting everything right in his soul with his maker. You know what I mean? That he could look him in the eye and go, whatever tasks you put in front of me, I feel that I've done them.
How long did you know that he was feeling suicidal for? Was there a first conversation where he said, I need to sit you down, I'm feeling like I want to end it?
When he was drinking heavily and he was in pain with, the depression and all that, it wasn't that he was suicidal. He just went, I don't give a fuck anymore. He went, if I drop down dead tomorrow, I've had a good life and I don't care. Right? And I think he was half, in a way, drinking to hoping that he would die. I do think that part of him was going, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And like I said, whatever happened in that hospital with the COVID, I never seen anyone change so drastically. And that's why I do think something happened to him in there, that he come out of there and, you know, whether we want to call it God, whether we want to call it a higher presence is not my position.
Some kind of spiritual awakening.
There's some kind of thing, you know, that I think if you do live your life in a good way, there's obviously something better for you after this.
And did
you know?
Dave believe that?
Yeah, definitely. In his heart and soul, Dave couldn't be a warrior. He couldn't be a man like shagging. He couldn't enjoy himself. He couldn't do and he'd had such an action-packed life. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to live them other 5 years going like 6 stone, like 8 stone, down to 6 stone, fucking people feeling sorry for him. He'd seen all that with the craze. He'd seen it with Ronnie Biggs and one of his close friends, Steve Bennett, died last year. And Dave witnessed him dying at 7 stone. Do you know what I mean? And he just weren't having none of that. I didn't realise it was over a year, I'd say a year before, when he sat me down and he went, listen to me, Brent, I'm fucking serious about this. He went, I ain't going to be here. He went, I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying life and I don't want to be here. And I went, oh, leave off, Dave. And he went, no, you fucking leave off. He went, explain to me what I'm getting out of life. He said, I get up in the morning, you make my breakfast, you look after me, I ain't complaining about that. But he went, I come downstairs and I'm in pain. I sit here with this fucking, you know, the arthritis was creeping back. His heart thing made it, he couldn't walk anywhere, he was out of breath. And he went like, so you have to do everything. You run the club, you sort the parties out, you do everything. He went, I'm just sitting here and all you're doing is like you're my fucking carer, which I would. I went, yeah, but I don't care, Dave. It don't matter, I love you. And he went, yeah, but it's not what I want. He said, this is not what I want. He went, my kids come here and see me, you know, whenever they want, once a week, once every 10 days. I see my mum once a week. I love my mum, I love my sister, I love my brother. But he went, I'm not happy. He went, I'm genuinely not happy. And he said, if you love me, understand this. I don't want to be here, Brent. I've had a good life. I've done everything I wanted. Look at what I've done. Look at how I've lived. He said, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that 7 stone fucking little creepy thing lying there with people taking photos of me and I'm losing my vanity. He said, I can't do it. So he said, do you understand? And I cried. And I went, well, I hear you. And he went, so understand, when it's my time, when I'm ready, you be ready. You understand what you've got to do. I'm leaving you to make sure you look after my missus, look after Courtney, help them out, be there for them, make them understand, because you can't tell them about this. No one is to know about this. But if I tell you now, you've got time to deal with it. And he went, I am going to do it. And I kept going, oh, all right. And as time went on, Liam, I half understood it. He was right. I could process it. And I could.
Did you believe him?
You never want to believe it.
And just remind me, so that conversation, the serious chat he had with you, how long before he actually done it was that?
That was maybe 14 months after that.
Okay, so that's a long time.
It's a long time.
It's a long time for you to live with the fact that.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell anyone.
Any day now, my best friend could end it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell anyone. And, you know, in that period of time, me and Mercy, who's actually been my rock, she's the one who's got me through this and got me where I am without any doubt. I'm hoping to get married to her, and I am very lucky to have that lady in my life. But she was talking to Dave. Dave had been going out with her mum, and we'd split up. Mercy had, you know, both of us probably needed time apart, and he orchestrated us getting back together. Right, and it was only afterwards, we both realised that because he loved me so much, he was never going to leave me on my own to deal with it. And putting her back, and what he'd done with Mercy, he'd half vetted her through her mum. He'd kept in touch. She did change. She did, go forward in her life as a person, Mercy, without a doubt. And she come back to me as a really strong, loving person that I feel absolutely blessed to have in my life. So it made me realise that when you look at the interviews I'd done after his passing, I said, Dave made death beautiful. And what I mean in that sentence is he done so many beautiful things for me. He left videos for his children. He couldn't have put more effort in to leaving us. Do you know what I mean? He had the hard end of it to do all that on his own. However hard it was for me, how he coped with that and lived every day, still smiled, still made us laugh, still carried on. You know what I mean? How he done that, I will never know. And the last couple of months of our life, we still had a lot of humour. It was a lot darker, but it was a bit like Randall and Hopkirk. I felt like I was living with a ghost. You know, there was times when he went to me, I've fucking had enough, Brennis. I might do, you know, and I went, I'll leave off, Dave. I've bought you a ticket for so-and-so. And he went, what do you mean? I said, well, I've done 150 quid. You can't do yourself now. I'm going to lose 150 quid. He went, shut up, you c-. I went, oh, fuck me. And I went, you know, look, it's Arsenal Man City this week. If they win, you'll regret it if you miss it. And it was like banter, but I was trying to make him hang on. And, you know, it was early August, and he said to me, I'm in pain, Bren. The arthritis now is really bad. He said, I've had enough. So I said to him, come on, we're Charlton are playing. Let's go football. You know what I mean? He went, I can hardly walk. I went, look, I'll drive you to the entrance. I didn't want to go and leave him on his own in case I come home and he weren't there. And I'd said to Jen a couple of times, if I had to go and see my dad, go round and see him, I couldn't tell her why. You know what I mean? I couldn't tell anyone. So I was trying to get people to go there without them understanding. And it was hard. But we went football that night, and, you know, football being a wonderful game as it is, and Charlton being as shit as they are, we fucking lost. So I come home and I went to him, if you're thinking of doing it tonight, Dave, save one to me, I'll fucking do it myself. These shit, we've just lost to Bristol Rovers. And he went, fuck off. He went, this is my thing, you're not ruining it. And it was mad having that conversation, but it did make both of us laugh.
Did you sense something was coming?
I kept, if I'm honest, Liam, I knew, but I kept looking away from it and refusing to accept it and not talk to him about it. And if he tried to bring something up, I'd say, I've got to go out, I've got to do this, and I kept thinking, the longer I don't talk to him, the more he might not do it. But all I was doing was, you know, Dave made his own mind up. He knew what he wanted, you know what I mean? And his vanity was too important. And in them last 3 or 4 months, he'd lost 3 stone. He weren't dieting, but he weighed himself every week. And he was losing weight every week. And I'm going, fuck me, you're doing all right, Dave. But it dawned on me, I thought, fuck me, he ain't actually dieting. He went from 18.5 stone down to 14 stone 10. And, you know, like, it was getting to the point now, looking back, if he had left it another month, 6 weeks, and people had seen that weight loss and noticed it, they'd have been all over him knowing he was ill. And he wouldn't have got to do what he wanted to do. You know, like, when I tell you how much effort he put into taking the exit door, right, on that day, we went to Charlton, you know, we had such a really good day. It was one of the best days we'd had for a while. He seemed to be on top form. And, you know, I'll say this, for them last few months of his life, he was in so much pain. The Simzia weren't working. They didn't have the right injection to mend him at the moment. It was going to take months. And he was in fucking pain, Liam. And what he used to do was, if we was having a party or we had to go somewhere, he would take 3 or 4 grams of whiz, right, just to get up, because then he'd go back to bed for 3 days. But just to get up and move, and how do you do that mentally? How do you do that? And then he could go out, still talk to people, still carry on, but it was the whiz that was getting him through it. And he used to come home, he'd go, I'm fucked, Brent, I'm hurting. But then he'd be wide awake, and I'd have to get him, like, he'd go and eat fucking 5 or 6 oxycones in a night just to try and get some sleep. So his life had become like a real fucking shit, really. You know, like you get up, you're in pain, you go out, you put a smile on for people, you come home and you're trying to fucking eat sleeping tablets to sleep. Right? And he was still in pain and it weren't going to get better. He was losing weight. But that day that we went out that day, he made us all laugh. You know, it was almost like he was giving us one last performance. Right?
What was he like in the morning of that day?
Perfect. Got up, fucking, we had our bit of banter. I said, come on, we're going Charlton today, Dave. We got a corporate thing where centre circle was the best package they got. We'll be on the pitch. We'll have a photo done with the players and bits and pieces. So it was a big day out for us. It was cool, right?
So the morning of the day that he killed himself,
yeah.
You wouldn't have suspected that would be the day?
Not a thing. Me and Mercy was there. We didn't have one iota of what was coming, nothing, right? And we went out, we went to football. Charlton had a rare 4-0 win, which made it really good. We come home, we watched the England rugby. England fucked up and lost the rugby. Me and him had some banter, and he went to me, I'm going upstairs now. And whether he meant that at the time, or you know what I mean, but he went, I'm going upstairs, Bren. All right? I went, all right, we're going up in a bit. And he went upstairs, went in his room.
Did you cuddle or anything?
No, it just went, it was a normal night.
Just a normal
night. It didn't give me anything other than that. It just went, yeah, I'm going upstairs now.
No signs at all?
Nothing, all right? So we've gone to bed. We watched a bit of Match of the Day. Me and her are all right. We fell asleep. I've got up for a piss at 3 o'clock in the morning and I can hear Dave on the phone. So I know he's still awake. I said to her, fuck me, he's still on the phone. As it happens, he was on the phone to her mum. Right, and he'd put everything right. Her and her mum, her and Mercy's mum, had a little bit of issues, probably because she didn't understand where Dave was. She didn't know. And he might have been trying to tell her. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. But anyway, they seem to have mended everything. But obviously that we know afterwards by looking at his phone, that phone call finished at 4:45. So I'd went asleep. And I can swear on my heart, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a gunshot. I didn't hear a thing. Neither did she. I got up at about 9:30, 9:45. Just walked in his room as usual to say, would you want Dave breakfast and all that? And he was slumped on the bed with a smile on his face. I don't know where all these other silly stories come from. But he had a black top on, he had his shorts on, he had his trainers on. And because I know him, Liam, I know how much he loved me and how much what this was a big thing. Because of our sense of humour, on the telly, he had a porn film on. And I know Dave's mind, he'd go, that will make him laugh. Because although I've took that way out at the end of my life, there was a porn film with a black geezer knocking one out on the telly. And I'm looking at it and I'm looking at him and I thought, I can't even proper cry. I'm trying not to laugh, right, in my own twisted way. But I cuddled him, I kissed him. He'd taken his aim there and the thing had not even come out. He had a bump on the side of his head.
So from behind the ear? From
behind the ear, it's hit him there or come out there. It's not broke the skin or nothing. He just had a bump here. Right, and he was stone cold. So I said to Merce, I went, Merce, he's done it. She went, what? I went, he's fucking done it. So she's come upstairs and I didn't want her to go in, but she said, no, I want to see him because he was like a dad to her. You know, he'd mentored her and helped her in the last 4 years of her life, been a big influence on her. She'd lost her dad and he was like a surrogate dad to her. And obviously she was hurting. She kissed him and cuddled him. I kissed him, cuddled him. And I said to her, what do? Do I ring Jen now? I don't want to ring the police. I don't want to tell anyone until I ring the family. Shall I ring them and shall I tell Courtney to come? And she went, yeah, you have to ring her. You have to tell them. You know what I mean? So she helped me with that decision and I rang Jen straight away and I went, listen, Jen, like Dave's passed here, he's gone. and she's just like, obviously the shock. And then I said, before anyone else comes here, Jen, do you want to come here with Courtney? Like he's took his own life, he shot himself. Do you want to come? And she went, of course. So, they turned up. Courtney was obviously in a state of shock. But, as the brave, strong girl that she is, she went in, kissed and cuddled her dad. And then she was crying and she was hurting. And I went, listen to me, Courts. Whatever you do before you leave this room, you forgive your dad. You might not understand it, but forgive him. Just forgive him. Don't leave this room without forgiving him. And she stopped and thought about it. And she went, no, I forgive him. She went, I genuinely forgive him. I went, cool. I said, if you can do that now, everything will be all right. Just trust me, forgive him. And she did. She come out of there. You know what I mean? It was for as much preparation as you can have for that event, Liam, it's still hard. Do you know what I mean? It's still quite traumatic.
Did he tell you how he was going to end his life?
No, I didn't want no part in it. Whatever I suspected, I said, Dave, I don't want to know. I don't want no part in this. Do you know what I mean? This is down to you. I'll do whatever you want me to afterwards. I won't tell anyone. I'll live with it. But you have to do that. I can't be a part of it.
Was you shocked to find that he'd shot himself?
No. Dave would have worked out the best, quickest, painless route that he thought would work 100%. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't that shocked. Like I said, the morning after, or from that moment on, you go into some form of adrenaline to function.
Survival mode.
And I then had to phone his sister, his mum. His other daughter was on the bus on the way to the house. Had I known that she was coming, I wouldn't have rung the police so quick. So once I'd spoke to his sister, I said, please go and tell your mum, go to the house, don't ring her, go and sit down and tell her. And when you've spoke to her, then you ring me and then I'll ring the police. So I don't want anyone to know until everyone who really matters to him is aware. Do you know what I mean? So she did do that. But obviously it gets out really quick. It got on Facebook. The other girl got there and she'd seen it on Facebook that her dad had taken his life.
Yeah.
So that was I'm gutted for her, and I know that's something that she's got to live with, right? But after that, it was just a matter of, like the police come in. We was there for a couple of hours outside the house while the forensic people went in.
Was you treated as a witness or a suspect?
No, I was treated as a witness from the minute the forensic people went in there. The armed response turned up first, then the forensic people come. We were standing outside the house for a good 2 hours before they come out and said to us, look, we need you to come down the station. You don't need a solicitor. It's to give a witness statement. We can see what's happened. We're aware of it. So, and I can't say anything bad about the police in that situation or them police officers that dealt with that. They were gentle with us. They were really sincere. They showed us nothing but respect. So I got no complaints on that front.
Did they quiz you on where he would have got the gun from?
No, they didn't ask me about that. They said, did I know about it? I said, no, I didn't know about it. They just asked me a few questions about our relationship, you know what I mean? And I told them, like, whether they were just, I think they was just routine. Do you know what I mean? They were just building up. They asked me what happened the day before, what we'd done. They took my phone. They checked all my phone. I told them, I said, look, I phoned his wife straight away before I phoned you because I wanted them to have that time with him. And they seemed to understand that. We didn't touch the weapon. We didn't touch him other than kiss his head and hug him. And like I said, he was smiling. Yeah.
And what was the weapon for the record?
It was like a Glock, like a green Glock, but I think it was a small caliber one. That's why it didn't come out of his head. Do you know what I mean? It was a small caliber. And like I said, Dave looked beautiful.
Do you think all them things were purposeful to protect everyone that found him?
What do you mean?
Well, What he done, I think, is extremely brave.
Yeah.
I would never, ever have the stones to do that.
No.
And I know that. But if I was put in a position where I had to do that, for me to make absolutely damn sure, I would make sure that whatever I was using done the job, and it would take half my head off.
Yeah.
So do you think Dave chose that weapon deliberately not to make so much mess, to make it easy for you to when you witness it?
If I'm really honest, I don't think Dave chose a weapon. I think he got what he could get to do what he had to do. Yeah. I don't think he really studied it too much. He just knew that he banked on the fact that if you put it that close to your head, it would end your life.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I don't think there was that much science in it. Knowing Dave, he would have gone, it's got a thing in it, that'll do. Boom. Right? That's how he treated his whole life. As long as it looked like it'd work, he'd go and do it. Do you know what I mean? So, in that respect, but it weren't until that day and the days afterwards I realised how much effort, like I said, how much effort he put in to taking his life. You know, because he then left videos for his mum, his brother, his sister, his children. Do you know what I mean? He left videos for me.
Well, that is the exact reason why I asked that question. That's what made me think. I wonder if he chose a weapon that didn't make it so ghastly for you to witness, protecting your feelings and everyone else's.
Possibly, I'll never know. But my personal thing is, I think Dave just got what he got. Do you know what I mean? I think whatever he done, he got what he got, and that was it. I'm glad. I think it could be a bit of just a blessing that that's what come up, and I think he was blessed that it ended up like that because, you know, his family could see him and he looked comfortable. His mum said she'd seen him looking worse when he was alive. When she'd seen him in the chapel arrest, she actually said, "I've seen him looking worse when he was alive." So, you know what I mean. And like I said, his mum is 92 and she has been an absolute rock. She's understood it. She said, "That's my David." She went, he would do what he wanted. You know, and bear in mind, what I haven't told you is he took his mum and his sister on holiday a month before that, or in the summer, about 6 weeks before he left. He took them on holiday. That was his final goodbye to them. You know, so he'd done everything that he possibly could. He took them away, had a week with them in Malta. You know what I mean? Was saying his goodbye as best he could. You know, like he'd made his mind up, Liam. He'd lost the cancer was eating him. He knew it had come back. You know what I mean? And I just think he was so brave.
I do.
He prepared me as much as he could. What more could he do to prepare me? What more could he give me? And he's already given me 30 years of a roller coaster of a life, which I would never have had unless I met him. You know, I'd have been a fucking probably epoxy boring digger driver. You know what I mean? Without Dave coming into my life, for all the pain and hardship and suffering, the times I had were good, outweigh all that for me. And to have that as my best mate made it worth every single day. Every single day was worth it. To have his memory, to have the love that I had of him, to have the relationship, and to have what he's left me. I feel that he left me with gold inside me. You know what I mean? The life that I can talk about now is just, I know that it's how special it is. You know, I want to share it with people. I want them to understand what Dave really was, because he wasn't what they all thought. I can't say any more than I've had such a fucking wicked time with Dave. I understand why he left the way he did. And like I said, he saved his family and me another 2 years of pain watching him suffer.
You told me about the videos that he'd left, farewell videos. Yeah. Did you find that video, or did the police?
Well, what was really weird and sort of lucky in some ways, when the police took over the house, David left his phone in the back room, in the back bedroom. He'd left it on the bed in the back bedroom. Now, whether he's that clever to actually think, look, the police will look in that room, I don't want them to get my phone because I've left everyone there, I want them to see it first, or whether he was concerned they might do something to it. But they had another phone in his room, an old one, and they presumed it was his phone, and they took it. So because we didn't have no clothes to change into, after 2 days, I went, please let me back in the house. Me and my missus have got no clothes here. We're having to stay in a hotel down the road. Can we go in? And they went, all right, we'll let you go in. So when I've gone upstairs, I just happened to look in the back room and I see his phone on the bed and I thought, fuck me. So I've took it, brought it back to the hotel and we started crying going through it because now we've sealed the videos.
How many did he make?
Oh, there was about 9, 10 videos. You know what I mean? Like, so then what I had to do then was take them to show them to Jen, Courtney, his mum, his sister, his brother. You know, like, he didn't get to make videos for as many as he wanted because I think, and I've seen other videos on there where Dave was saying, well, this is it, I'm ending it tonight. And he must have been planning to do it 2 or 3 nights and he didn't for whatever reason, whether he couldn't or he didn't or something come into his head that he felt he had to do, he didn't. So I do think he would have left more videos, but I think you've got to understand that when someone's going to do this, make this decision, it's a final decision. And to find the balls and the steel to do that, if it come to him that day and we'd had such a good day and he was really happy and he felt at peace, he didn't have time to do the rest of what he might have wanted to done, and he done it. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's not taken away from any of the people that might have thought he should have left a video to. I just think respect the fact that that was a fucking big hard thing he was doing and he just chose to do it that day and some things he didn't get finished. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it goes to show just how ballsy he was. That's
absolute balls of steel. And, you know, all your internet warriors that want to slag him off, right? When it comes to it, let's see how many of them have the balls. He's now set the fucking bar. Yeah? How many of you are going to die like fucking mongs all dribbling with your fucking illness, or how many of you are going to have the balls? Right, whether you like me or hate me for saying that, but he set the fucking bar there. Slag him off, say what you want, but you can't judge him now because you got to fucking be prepared. You know what I mean? Whether you want to edit that or I've said something wrong now, I apologise, but that's how I look at it. You can do all your internet talk and your fucking button thing and all that. I lived with that man and he was a fucking brave, brave man. He done more in his life than all of these pricks that talk about it on there will ever do. Yeah, and he was my fucking hero.
Yeah. Well, but like I said to you earlier, the more I've got to know Dave, the more I liked him, the more I like him, and the more respect I've got for him. And I, for one, are on exactly the same side as you when it comes to what he done, how he chose to leave this world. I tip my hat to him because that takes big, big balls.
Yeah, proper balls. Right?
And why did he choose such a discreet funeral?
Right, well, I'll come to that because there was a couple of things there that I think, and he sat down with me in August this year and he said, look, this is what I want to do, Bryn. He went, because my funeral, he said, you know, it would be a fiasco. He went, I know at least 200-300 men worthy of carrying my coffin as friends of what they've done for me and what part of my life they've been in. He went, so I'm going to offend most of them by choosing 6 to carry the coffin. He said, I'm going to offend other people who might not get in the church. I'm going to offend some birds. They're going to be arguing. He said, at the end of the day, my children, my mum and my kids have still got to live through this final bit of my life. He said, what I would like is I want a private ceremony. I want to go away on my own and be cremated. He said, I want you lot to go, you organise a family to be together at the house on that day. Yeah. And he said, no, I want to go away and then they can bring me back later. And he said, I don't want anyone to go to the funeral parlour. He said, including you. He said, don't go. He said, just let my mum, my sister, my brother, my kids go to the funeral parlour. Please don't let anyone else go. He went, because I'll have whatever state I'm in, I only want my family. I only want my family to have to see me. Right, so I was trying to do all that. As I've said in other things, some egotistic fucking idiots decided that they were too important and they had to go to the funeral parlour, pretended to be his brother, got in and then made a group video call to show his body off to other people. And when Courtney turned up there and met them coming out, they said, no, we haven't done anything. We wouldn't do anything like that. Until one of these pricks then started showing the photo of Dave in the funeral parlour.
Wow.
These are people that say they're his friends.
Has that photograph leaked?
I haven't seen it. I don't think it's leaked. I think the geezer actually, when he found out that we found out, I think he proper shit himself, and rightly so. He should shit himself, and I think he's deleted it because he's just a lying fat prick. The geezer that took it, he's a knob.
That is a terrible thing to do.
It's the most disrespectful thing, and what I would say about these people, if they are meant to be Dave's friends, imagine what they're like if they don't like you. Because if they do that to someone who was defenceless in a funeral parlour and destroy his family had to share his life with the public. Dave wanted his passing to be shared with his family, something that only them and him could have together. That's what his wishes were. And they stained that. They stained that for Courtney, for Chelsea, for Jen, for his mum, his sister, all the people that, you know, Dave, his family that genuinely loved him, they took that away from him. For what? Just to prove that they could get in and to prove that they knew him and that they fucking were that important. You know what I mean? They weren't. They weren't important to Dave, and they weren't friends of Dave's. I don't care who they are and what they pretended to be for the last 20 or 30 years in Dave's life. That ain't your friend to do that.
Our friend wouldn't do that.
Right? Everyone else, and these are the same people that reckon they thought I'd killed him, and there was all internet shit going on that I was meant to have killed Dave and I might have killed him and all this bollocks, all by absolute wank people that ain't got no brains, yeah, just no, and just want to go, well, I know the real truth, I know this, do you know what I mean? All, like, the real people in Dave's life all spoke to me and was more than happy with how I've conducted myself as best I could on behalf of him, and didn't and only showed me respect. And none of them doubted for a minute. I mean, how can you doubt it? The police come there and done a 4.5 day forensic search of that house. You know, they're not fucking idiots. If there was anything other than what they've done, they would know. Right? And if any one of them people out there think I could be your mate for 30 years and do that at the end of it, I fucking loved them with all my heart. I couldn't do that. You know, so anyone who thinks I could do that is a dickhead. You obviously just want a bit of, oh, I know better and I'm, you know, like, I've got the inside story. There's no inside story. I've just explained it to you on here. That is the fucking truth, the whole truth, and there is no other bit to it. That's it.
Well, if there was anything more to it, the police would have taken care of it.
Of course. And I sleep comfortably every day. I miss Dave every day. But part of him, genuinely, Liam, lives in me. Right? His spirit of the goodness of him and his spirit and his strength and his truth lives with me. You know what I mean? I don't have to be scared. I'm not scared. You know, like I'm not. I miss you, Dave, but I do understand. I think there's a man called Stephen French who has spoke about Dave and said in, I think, Japan, there is a culture that when a man has done all he can in life and he wants to end his life, they take their own life. And it's classed as a dignified way out. I'm not sure what the term was he used for it, but he explained it in such a good way. And he knew Dave really well. Right, Dave really, you know, he come to London and Dave was very polite, looked after him, helped him. You know what I mean? Dave was cool, like with anyone like that. If you were trying to get on and tell your story, Dave understood the troubles and the hardship you would have doing it all, and he gave you every bit of knowledge and help that he could to make you better with it. You know, and he's given me everything that I think I need. I think Dave's left it in me. The treasure he's left is inside.
Well, you've got similar traits and mannerisms, which has been nice to see throughout our conversation.
Listen, I am more than proud of my friendship with Dave. I'm proud to have stood beside him, and no matter how bad it was, I would do it all again. If we had to go through it again, I wouldn't change nothing. You You know what I mean? I wouldn't. If you went to me now, this is what it is, and this is what's going to happen. Like, a lot of people would say, oh, I'd love it to be different, but if that's what it is, it is. Yeah, but trust me, Liam, for the love, the excitement, the fun, and the razzmatazz of the ride, yeah, I got no complaints. Yeah, and what Dave done, he ended his life on his terms, under his conditions, in control. Well, we all clamber to live in life and want to stay in life, but Dave was big enough to look at life and go, what am I living for? What is it? You know, what are we all desperate to be a part of? If you haven't got that capacity to enjoy your life, if you haven't, and when you've lived the way he had, yeah, there was no way he could have then done that last bit. He just couldn't do it then, because he lived a razzmatazz life. And there was no way Dave was going to sit there for the last 18 months of his life or year, losing half a stone, and going down to 6-7 stone, and us going, oh, Dave, all right, you all right? Oh, I love you. Yeah, and watching his children out, watching his wife look at him and not see him for what she'd always seen him. He's left his children with that beautiful image of him. You know, he's left his children with the image of Dave Courtney, the man that we all knew. Yeah, he's not nothing else.
What do you miss about him the most?
I just miss that being able to bounce off him humour thing, right? I'm very lucky that the relationship I've got with Mercy at the minute, she gets my sense of humour, and she's got a similar sense of humour, and she's the closest thing I've got to having Dave, because she just sees me as a piss taker as well, and gives it to me, takes the piss out of me as well. So we do have that. It's the closest thing I could have. The biggest honour I could say to her is, the humour-wise, what you've give me, Merce, is as close to what Dave would in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Obviously, it ain't the same, because we've had 30 years together, and blokes' banter's a bit different.
It's like Morecambe and Wise.
Exactly.
Spending their whole life together, and one of them goes.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel at the moment. And like I say, my biggest, you know, like it was a few weeks ago, I genuinely one day walked upstairs and I went to go in Dave's room to ask him something. I went, oh, fuck. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how crazy it still is. You know, like, part of me now is ready to move out of the house. You know, and I'll be moving out in the next sort of 2 months, I think, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I'm not sure. But me and Mercy are ready to move into a new phase of our life. And all I can say is thank you, Dave. Thank you for everything. And even giving me Mercy at the end of it. You put mercy upon my soul.
And before I ask my final question, is there anything that you want to reminisce about, just without me prompting or asking the leading question, anything that you want to say or any memories that you want to rehash? Just completely take the floor.
Do you know what?
Whatever you want to get off your chest even.
Yeah, do you know what, Liam? Like I said, the memories I've got with Dave will come over the next few years. I'll share them bit by bit, because they're so in-depth and so many and so funny, you know, like this one come to mind earlier, and like when he was in hospital one time, he was in Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and he'd had bad, we realise now it was his first bit of arthritis. His foot used to swell up like a balloon, and he couldn't walk on it, you know, and he'd been shot in that leg, and he thought that it was, they did tell him it was the bone fracturing in the bottom of the leg in the socket, because he'd come out of hospital too early. So, but he used to get this swelling of the foot, and they took him into hospital, and it was when we used to go raving, we were full on it every weekend, and he was in hospital, and I thought, fuck me, it's a bit of an inconvenience, this, you know, Dave. We felt we didn't go out on the Saturday, because, like, you weren't out, and, like, you know, we haven't gone out. But this girl was running a club on a Sunday called the Dog House up in Soho, and it was like a little after party club. But she'd always said to us, oh, we used to go there most Sundays. So we was in the hospital. We went up to see him, and we went, Dave, we're going to go up the Dog House for a couple of hours. It's Sunday afternoon. Do you want to sneak out for an hour? And he went, yeah, fuck it, why not? And he's in his hospital gown, and he had a drip on. So he's got no pants or nothing on. So I've got him in the Range Rover. The other geezer with me had a Shogun behind us, a long wheelbase Shogun, and we had two of the motorbike lads as outriders. Right, so we've now shot up the West End and we're like taking the piss in the traffic. You know, this is before it got as bad as it was. It's 20 odd years ago, like, right? So the bikes are stopping the traffic. We're going through red lights. And then at one of the traffic lights, one of the motorbike riders had come over to Dave, put the window down and put two E's in his mouth. Right, so we're having an E on the way up there. We've got into this club and like Dave's now having to hang his drip on the bar. So he's sitting there with a bottle of champagne, all his bollocks hanging out, sitting at the bar in a hospital gown at 4:00 Sunday afternoon at this rave. Like, and you can imagine how people are off their nut and they're going, is that really happening? Right, but the geezer I had with me was an absolute fucking monster on gear as well. And because we haven't been out for the weekend at that time, we've now got a bit excited and we've had a knee and then we sniffed a bit of ketamine and then he's drunk a bottle of GHB and had another E, but he's now starting to have fits and convulsions. Right? And they're looking at him, he's foaming at the mouth and they're going, fucking hell, should we call an ambulance? The girl's going to me, I said, you can't do that. She said, well, I said, he's got to drive home later. So he actually sat in the corner for about 3 hours at this club and then he come round again and he come back and we're in there now. We've been in there from about 3-4 o'clock and it's like 8:30 and we're buzzing now. The music's good. We're on one and Dave went, Bren, I've got to go back to the hospital. I went, oh, fuck me, Dave. He went, mate, I've only meant to go out for a smoke. And I went, oh, I suppose you're right. And we had to drive back to Queen Elizabeth, got there about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And this nurse is going fucking mad. She's going, he's not had his medication. I'm going, don't worry, he's had all the medication he needs. He's all right. And we dropped him off at the hospital and he went straight into the ward and back in. Like, how many people have done that? Do you know what I mean? It was just a so off-the-wall thing to do. The people in that club will remember it. The girl knows it. Do you know what I mean? I'm telling you the truth, Liam. That's what. And they were wacky things like that used to happen with me and him all the time.
Yeah, he was a wild man, wasn't he?
The beauty of being around him, something was going to happen. You didn't know what it was, but something would happen. So you never knew waking up what was going to happen each day.
Well, I've heard from Dave's mouth how much he loved you, and I can now see why. And my final question is this. If Dave Courtney was sat in front of you now, what would you say to him?
I miss you, Dave, right, for throwing the lid of the milk away every morning and leaving the milk out, right? I miss you for all them stupid things that you used to annoy me with. Right, if I could have one more day with you, I'd have it, right? I'd have it for whatever effort I have to give for it. For you, mate, I'd have it. Right, that's how much I miss you. But thank you, Dave. I've got no complaints. You've left me with everything. You've left me with the love of your daughter, your family that love me, the people around you that have showed me so much love. I've got no complaints. I can only, without you, Dave, I would have had none of it. So thank you.
I feel like every man on earth needs a Brendan in their life. Thank you for sharing your story with me and for trusting me to open up like you did. It's been fun. It's been sad. You nearly...
I was close there, you know what I mean?
Nearly got a tear out of me. I fought for my life not to do that, but I had nearly lost it completely. So, that moved me, and I thank you for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good health, brother.